Welcome to the second in the series of the Arise News Town Hall, supported by CDD and most of Nigeria's mainstream media. It's a privilege to introduce the candidates for today's series, who are also laying claims to the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 2023. 2023, as has been said, is a different election. And it looks to me that all votes will matter and all parties may matter ultimately. So we start with my good friend, the activist, Omosh Yele Showore of the African Action Congress. Please come right in. And then we have Engineer Yagbagi Sadi of the Action Democratic Party. Of course, we have a man whose brother or whose uncle was vice presidential candidate to Obafemi Awolowo in those days. So another Umiadi, Professor Peter Umiadi of the ABGA. And of course, we have Prince Adewole Adebayo of SDP. You are welcome. The stage is set. The town hall begins now with our two anchors, Rufai Hosseini and Leila Johnson Salami. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the chairman of the This Day and Arise Group, Prince Nduka Obaibana, and a very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Arise Presidential Town Hall series on security and the economy. This is the second of a number of town halls to come as we approach the 2023 elections in less than 3 months' time. I'm Leila Johnson Salami, here today with Rufai Hosseini.
Pleasure to be here, Leila, and good to be working with you. The Town Hall series is organized in collaboration with the Center for Democracy Development, and our partners include Premium Times, the Nigerian Guild of Editors, the Nigerian Union of Journalists, NUJ, the Guardian newspaper, Daily Trust newspaper, Leadership newspaper, the Cable newspaper, New Telegraph newspaper, we've got Vanguard newspaper, the Sun newspaper, and Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition.
This evening is an opportunity for presidential candidates to share their views and engage with the public on topics of concern to Nigerians. 4 presidential candidates are here with us this evening, introduced already and seated on the stage. We have the candidates of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Showore. Good evening, sir. We have the candidates of the Action Democratic Party, Engineer Yabagi Sani. Very good evening to you, sir. The candidates of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, Professor Peter Umwedi. Very good evening to you, sir, who is also a former chief judge. And the candidate of the Social Democratic Party, Prince Adewole Adebayo. A very good evening to you as well, sir. Our panelists this evening include the lead consultant, or rather journalist, and also policy experts, Mr. Waziri Adio. And we are also joined this evening by Kemi Okeodo, the Executive Director of Partners West Africa. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Right, before we get started, we have some general house rules that we need to run through. This is a town hall meeting and not a debate. Therefore, there are no direct rebuttals from the candidates. No clapping or cheering from the audience going forward. As candidates speak, we ask that other candidates are respectful and no interruptions. We ask that you are respectful of the timekeeper's rules. There shall be a timekeeper who will alert you when you have 30 seconds to go, and at the end of time, allotted to each response.
Today, Premium Times Nigeria will be fact-checking claims that are made by the presidential candidates during the first half of this town hall, while the Nigeria Fact Checkers Coalition, NFC, which brings together fact-checking organizations in the country, including Africa Check, CJID Daily Trust, Dubawa, Facts Matter NG, ICIR, The Cable, Fact Check Hub, The Insights, Digital Africa Research Lab, Premium Times, and CDD will be fact-checking the second half of this town hall. Candidates are advised to be conscious of the claims that they make during the course of the conversation, please. And a group photo of all candidates will take place at the end of the program. Without further ado, let's get started, and we'd like to start by opening the floor to each candidate to introduce themselves. Candidates, you have 3 minutes to give your opening remarks, your commencement remarks on your national security plan. You have 3 minutes to do this. Please note that the timekeeper will alert you when you have 30 seconds to go. Mr. Omoyele Sowore, let's start with you, sir.
Thank you and good evening for inviting me here tonight. I must state that last week should have been the day we should all be here. But for some reasons, you decided to invite the elites within the presidential race. And we think you owe us an apology for that, because Nigeria should stop bringing people who have no ideas to talk to Nigerians when those who have ideas are relegated to the background. That is where we have gotten it wrong all these years. My name is Omoyele Sowore, and I'm here as an activist for over 32 years, 3 decades, fighting for the rights of Nigerians, my own rights, and a desire to make this country work for everybody. The things that I fought for when I was in my 20s at the University of Lagos as a freshman that were not addressed are the reason why Nigeria has refused to move and make progress to today, especially in the area of security and insecurity, as we are here to discuss tonight, and the economy. I was one of the young students who said in 1989 and 1990 that the economic policy that Nigeria had adopted, which is known as the Structural Adjustment Program, was going to destroy Nigeria. It was at that period that the IMF and the World Bank said we can no longer fund housing, we can't fund education, we can't fund anything that will bring the welfare of our people at par with the rest of the world. It was at that period that they destroyed the industrial base of this country so that they can prepare Nigeria as a dumping ground for Western companies. It was at that time that the insecurity that we are experiencing today started. Nobody should deceive us that our insecurity has one reason. The special factors where Nigeria is insecure today is because Nigeria refused to invest in its youth, in its people, when it mattered the most. As a matter of fact, when they had a chance to do it, they wasted the opportunity by staging what is known as FESTAC, Festival of Arts and Culture, where Nigeria decided that they had too much money. They don't know what to do with it. So they invited the whole world to a feast in Lagos, known as FESTAC. Subsequently, after that, we kept failing our people. And as of today, Nigeria is reaping from what it refused to do. As of today, Nigeria is not only insecure, it has become one of the most insecure countries in the world, in which even its security officers are no longer secure. Last week, the wife of one of Nigeria's top officials in the security sector was abducted. Our president was threatened by bandits and terrorists. And I don't know if he's back in the country, but he left the country at the time the country needed him the most to take care of himself. It is time to take care of Nigeria security by ensuring that we put social security at the back of all policies for the citizens of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Please, once again, we appreciate you. We know you have support for the candidates on the stage, but the rules are the rules. No clapping, please. Thank you. We'd like Engineer Yabaga Sani of the African Action Democratic Party to please step forward and give us a summary, of his journey thus far by introducing himself to us.
I can stand up.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Your Excellencies, the organizers of this very important engagement, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Engineer Yabagi Yusuf Sani. I was born in Bida. I schooled in Bida and Kontagora, all in Niger State. I attended Kontagora Secondary Technical School. In 1974, I got admission into Institute of Technology in New York. After 2 years in Institute of Technology in New York, I transferred to Columbia University, also in New York. While I was in Columbia University, I studied industrial and management engineering and operations research. Take note of that because it's very important, it's relevant to why I'm here today. My education prepared me very well to engage effectively with social problems, economic problems, and if you like, political problems. As an industrial engineering that's also studied operations research. When I came back to Nigeria, I got employed, but I got employment with NMPC. That is after my NYC, and I spent about 3 years in NMPC, and I resigned my appointment. I resigned my appointment because I did not like the kind of disorganization I saw in that organization that I believe was a promise of greatness for this country. When I resigned my appointment with NMPC, I founded a company called Fuel Vouchers Nigeria Limited, which was to introduce the cashless transaction beginning from the oil transaction in Nigeria. And like I said, while I was in NMPC, I noticed two things. One was the fact that the structural organization NMPC was not meant to serve Nigerians. And I discovered that I had something that I could do, but I couldn't do it within. So when I left NMPC and I founded Fuel Vouchers Nigeria Limited, I also was able to establish another company that was to introduce the issue of transparency and accountability, which is what we are battling with today. So insecurity, we can't get insecurity in Nigeria if the company that earns the largest income for this country is so arbitrarily managed. So all our problems can be traced to the economic arrangement in this country. It can be traced to the kind of leadership we have had all along. It can be traced to the fact that in the security outfit, we do not have what is called the standard and the policy of application of our security organization and the method of fighting insecurity.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Engineer Sani.
Yeah.
Let's please move on to Professor Peter Omoyadi. We would like to hear from you, sir, with regards to your national security plan for Nigeria. Please be reminded that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I thank Arise for bringing me here tonight. My name is Peter Omoyadi. I'm the presidential candidate for All Progressive Grand Alliance, ABGA. Now, ABGA puts it this way, that we are starting afresh. And ABGA says that everything we're going to do will rest squarely on social progress. What we mean is that every Nigerian should have the opportunity of getting to the maximum of his or her potential. And then you talk about our country and you talk about insecurity. I've said many times, you don't treat issues of security with kid gloves. What keeps a country going, every other society, are sanctions. When you don't enforce sanctions, you don't expect security, and you don't expect progress. It's been said, my uncle of blessed memory, I like speaking about him, and he's my friend. We talk, and he told me about this story, about a man who said on his first day in office, in power, on a crime-ridden, corrupt security situation, he will invite the head of police into his office and ask him to put his badge on the table and walk out because his job is determined. And he will go down the line to see a worthy police officer and hand over the badge. Because if you fix the police, you fix security, especially in Nigeria. And that's what we need to do. And I tell you this, you can't fix the police when the police are out there collecting bribes on a daily basis. You can't fix the police when there's police checkpoints and army checkpoints, and they have civilians attached to them, especially in the southeast, collecting money on their behalf in broad daylight. There's no way you're going to be in the metal to do your work as a security officer. Let's go back to Spartan. You say a Spartan dies but never surrenders. Spartan, with their exploits in military times, rested on discipline. If you are not disciplined, you can't enforce security. And that is why the things that are happening, and all the old farmers are chased out by bandits who used to hold canes to, head their cows, suddenly got to AK-47, and nobody is taking responsibility for that. And you're talking about security.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. We'd like to call on next Priest Adewale Adebayo of the Social Democratic Party, the SDP. You have the floor.
On what topic?
Yes. An overview, your security plan, economic plan, and little introduction.
Thank you. I'm Adewale Adebayo. I'm 50 years old. I'm a lawyer, licensed in Nigeria, in the US. I'm practicing in many countries. I'm a chartered arbitrator. And I am the presidential candidate of the SDP. And by the way, I align myself with the sentiment expressed by Mr. Showore of the AAC regarding the role of the media. I believe that the media, the way the media helped the fight for independence, the media helped to get rid of the military, the media still has a role to play in helping us to midwife our democracy. The media should be seen as a catalyst that is allowing ideas to flow. With respect to the security situation in Nigeria, there are two components to it. Security, generally discussed, deals with public safety and general feeling of lack of fear or instability. With respect to public safety, we've made three mistakes which we need to correct. One, we have the wrong architecture for crime prevention. We need to ensure that any organ of government that has a power to legislate should have a power to enforce. Therefore, if you see, many of the crimes that we cry about are actually state crimes: murder, kidnapping, banditry. But those states don't have the power to enforce their own law. So we need to deal with that. I'm going to get that right. Secondly, if you look at the journey of our journey into insecurity, the first major one was during the Civil War. We had so many innocent people exposed to warfare. And the army was not careful enough in mopping up the arms. And what happened was that we had armed robbery. And the way military would do their thing, they passed the armed robbery tribunal, firearm tribunal. At the end of the day, we didn't get rid of that. Then, as we're going towards the end of military rule, the military did three things. The entire military combined together to weaken the police, because the military didn't want the police to be able to stop them from taking power all the time. So they weakened the police. Shagari tried to address it with with Adewusi, with the Second Republic, but it didn't have enough time. Second thing that happened was that the army weakened the Air Force. After the scary coups that they were having among themselves, so the army was working to weaken the Air Force. So we don't have the air cover. The third thing that happened was that when we came to civilian rule, the civilians who came also became a little jittery and entirely weakened the entire military without investing in the military. So what I'm going to do is to reinvent the architecture, ensure that at local level and state level we have law enforcement. Then the Air Force is able to give air cover and ensure that intelligence, which is warehoused in the office of the NSA, is depoliticized, and that we can combine all of this together. You have a strong architecture, and you will see that it will improve.
Okay, thank you so much. So we will start with the questions now, deeply on security. And this will cut across all the candidates. It's a question about what you will do if you were president. Only last Tuesday, INEC said 242 polling units with 142,261 registered voters in 10 local government areas of Katsina State are under serious attacks, serious threats for the elections. This could have implications on the elections and disrupting our democratic process. If you were Omoyele Sowore, Nigeria's next president, how do you intend to address the widespread insecurity in the country?
Job of the president of a nation is for the president to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. That we don't have in this country as of today. What you have is a rogue system of security in which everybody is doing what they like. And other elements within government use whichever security agencies they have to carry out their own nefarious activities, sabotaging the Nigerian people. That's one statement of fact we must tell ourselves. The second aspect of it is that I am not Nigeria's president today. If I had been voted for in 2019, you would not be talking about places being taken over, because I have divided the security problems in Nigeria into three. One is the usual enforcement, physical security. The second aspect of it is collection of intelligence, analysis of intelligence, and execution of intelligence. But you can only collect intelligence if you have intelligent people running intelligence organizations. I was detained at the DSS for 5 months. They were there watching BB Niger instead of collecting intelligence, analyzing them, and using that to stop terrorists and bandits. I was there when they recruited them to go to Kogi State, and I'm stating facts here, to go and rig election for the current governor of Kogi State. You cannot run a country like that and expect to be safe when your intelligence officers who are supposed to collect intelligence are not doing it. But one thing we must state categorically before I announce what I will do about this, is that Nigeria has to resolve the problem of inequality, hunger, poverty, before we can be talking about using guns. It has been known that countries that are doing well economically usually or rarely even use guns because their citizens are happy. When you're not happy and people have been cheated over time, you will not get solution to this problem. But to not talk about what I would have done in Katsina, is that we have always known that Katsina was under siege. And don't let us deceive ourselves. Katsina is not the only state that is under siege. Kaduna, southern Kaduna is under siege. Sokoto is under siege. Zamfara is under siege. The Niger Delta region is under siege. Why are we behaving as if it's only in Katsina that elections will not happen? Let us tell ourselves the truth. I'm not sure that we can have about 25% of the land mass of Nigeria hold free and fair elections in 2023 the way we are going. And it doesn't matter how hard we try. We've spoken to INEC about it. INEC itself is not sure. Ogun State last week, the INEC office was burned down with all the voters' cards there. They said they're going to reprint new ones. Who knows how they're going to go about it? So we have to be proactive in ensuring that these crimes are caught before they happen, and that we have security agencies that are capable of dealing with security, and most importantly, that you have a head of state
Okay.
that is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and not the one commanding from the back.
Okay. We'll move on to, once again, please, no clapping. Those are the rules. We'll move on to Engineer Yabagasani. Same question. If you were president, what would you do as regards the insecurity in the country, 10 local governments in Katsina State, and other parts of the country with threats here and there? What would you do?
Well, in any government at all, if you don't have rule of law, applied in governance, what you have is arbitrariness, and you have cases of issues like nepotism, corruption, and no matter how effective the government may be, the machinery may be, if you have people having a sense of marginalization, they don't feel that they belong. Take, for instance, our security outfit today. Unfortunately, it's lopsided in terms of the leadership that you have in the security outfit. And that itself introduces some kind of, people not applying themselves in the manner that they're supposed to. So, as a president, I will govern with rule of law. And that means that nobody will be above the law. And that will mean that the security agencies will work in a manner that they will share information, they will gather intelligence, they'll process this in the manner that it's supposed to process, and it will be applied in order to ensure that when there's an incident, you are able to act effectively. What is happening to us in this country is that, one, there's government, but hardly can you see evidence of governance. And if you do not have issues dealt with dispatch, definitely what you find is a anarchy in the country. So I will be very, very effective in dealing with issues of insecurity. I will deal with the issue of poverty, like Shawale has said. Poverty is one thing that diminishes, the citizens. They will not be able to live up to their responsibilities because security is not just for the agencies themselves, security agencies, everybody's supposed to be involved. And if you don't have information provided by the citizens to the security agencies because there's a loss of confidence because of corruption that is in the system itself, then what you find is a deteriorating situation no matter how much you try. So poverty has to be dealt with. The issue of people identifying and feeling that they belong is also an important aspect in governance. So I think once I can deal with these two things, then you will be able to tackle the issue of security in this country.
Thank you so much for your time. Next, we move on to Professor Peter Omerdi of the All Progressive Grand Alliance, APGA. INEC has said 242 polling units with 142,261 registered voters. We also had the case of Abeokuta INEC Center attacks all over the country. As Commander-in-Chief, Professor Omerdi, what would you do?
That is the word, as Commander-in-Chief. I don't know why anyone wants to become president and then begin to delegate powers that he has gotten in a vote that he has won. If I'm president, I'm going to steep myself into the work, and I'm going to get those reports directly, and I'm going to find out what is going there on a second-to-second basis. That is very important. And that's why I say it's about the layout, it's about the discipline, it's about the structure of security that we have in the country, but most importantly, it's about the leadership. That is why you see all over the world, one leader is in a very important event overseas, and something happens in his home country, he aborts that visit overseas, gets on the next plane, and gets home. Because he has to be in direct contact with what is happening in his home country. And that is the only way to get these things done. because there are a lot of buck passing, if you understand what I'm saying. People always shift blames in our country. People always find who didn't do what right. But is that what I'm going to listen to as the commander-in-chief? No, I want results. And I give you a time to get it done. And I'm there waiting for you to bring back your report to me. And everybody will have to prove his pay at the end of the day. So, you see, because I said it before on a television interview on Arise, that I do not know why a policeman will run away from an armed robber. The anchor said to me, because the armed robbers are better armed than the police. And I pushed back. Why should the armed robber be better armed than the police? That is the issue. You don't do such a thing. So you have to get your act together and make sure that, in other words, there is one state. If the state does not prevail, it has gone under. Nothing should stop elections or whatever activity from going on in any part of the country because somebody has seized that place and has, been shooting guns and burning places, and then you won't take the activity you have. In fact, overseas, I've seen them cordon the White House. At the end, it wasn't accessible to tourists as it used to be, but you could see the extent of it. Here, the police formations across the country have been blocked entirely. In Oka, you have to go through the village to get where you're going, because that is extent of fear that even the security officers have.
Thank you so much, Professor Peter Omedi, for your time. We move on to Prince Adewale Adebayo of the Social Democratic Party. With all the challenges we've got in Nigeria as regards insecurity, it's staring at us in the face, like INEC disclosed, that elections, holding elections might be difficult under this security climate. 242 polling units in Katsina and other parts of the country. As Commander-in-Chief, this was brought to your notice. What would you do?
First, as Commander-in-Chief, I am the one to bring it to the notice of INEC, not INEC bringing it to my notice. I'm in charge of security, for God's sake. The first thing we need to know is that the political elite, they are very good with scaremongering. They like to frighten you anytime election is coming. They are burning somewhere, turning somewhere. That's just arson. A state has a commissioner of police, director of state security, fire service, commandant general, whatever. That's a local issue for them, because if you are having arson of that magnitude, intelligence will catch up with you. Even those days, the Native Authority Police will handle that immediately. Insurance company used to have people who go after arsonists, even insurance company. So what is happening here is this. You can have elections, and somebody is put there, and it doesn't end up forming a government. Remember that recently we had 6 months in which after swearing in, there was no cabinet. What is happening is that even when the cabinet is set up, it's just a nominal cabinet because they don't do the function. What we need to understand is that the insecurity in this country stays and starts from the villa. Everything you see outside, if you put a proper commander-in-chief in place, and they're not using security as a way to compensate people, they are managing the security architecture well. What we call big crimes in Nigeria are very minimal. So the problem in the country is this, and I'm going to fix it as follows. One, you have to ensure that you do not bring political activists, supporters, into the security architecture. Right now, that's where most money goes, and that's why they bring all kinds of incompetent. People who got fired for incompetence in their career get brought back to come and manage this money. And instead of facing the issue of insecurity and collaborating with one another, what they do is that they fight one another for budget. So even this one of trying to manage against arson and all of that to ensure the elections hold, they will not cooperate. They will be fighting about who's going to control the money. That's what the problem is. Last week or so, I was with the president in Owerri when the police were doing their planning for the election. I listened attentively, and I discovered that the president came there, didn't give them any direction, cut the tape and gave a few speeches, disappeared. And at the end of the day, you see that there's nothing that's been done. What I'm going to do, therefore, is to ensure that you form a proper government, you run the services. These are small problems, and we can deal with them, I can assure you.
Thank you, Prince Adebayo. We are now going to turn to our panelists. Our panelists this evening will be proposing questions to our presidential candidates. Candidates, please note that for this round, you have 2 minutes to answer the questions given to you by the panelists. And we will start off with Mr. Waziri Adio, a journalist, policy expert, and founder of Agora Policy. Mr. Waziri, over to you, please.
Thank you very much. This question is for all the candidates. I had a policy think tank called Agora Policy, and it released a report on understanding and tackling insecurity in Nigeria. And that report identified the drivers of insecurity in Nigeria, and some of the things that it identified as the drivers include inappropriate security architecture, easy access to arms and drugs, porous borders, and grievances and so many other things. So as Commander-in-Chief, what will you do to address specific things that you're going to do to address the drivers of insecurity in Nigeria? Thank you.
Mr. Omoyele Sowore, let's start with you, please.
Thank you, Waziri. Waziri was a student of the University of Lagos when I was president of the University of Lagos. Together, we delivered democracy to Nigeria in the 90s, eventually. So it's good to see you. And I want to say that what you've stated are the same things I have been addressing, that inequality drives insecurity, corruption drives insecurity, lack of borders. I stated it recently that one of the most bizarre policies of this current government was the closure of borders. You cannot close what does not exist. Nigeria doesn't have borders. And I can state it categorically because I used to be a border rat. That is to say, I sneak into Nigeria and outside Nigeria, not as a smuggler, but because I was wanted by the government for a long time. There are houses in Ogun State that the back is Nigeria, the front is Benin Republic. Just walk through, you are in Nigeria. Walk back, you are in Benin Republic. So you don't have a homeland security strategy. And the reason why our security architecture is not effective is part of what we've been saying when you put in competent people to manage a country of 200 million people, which is not based on their experience or competence in these very important areas. The result you get is what we have now. And I hope Prince Adewale is not saying that the political activist is not good. I'm a political activist, you know, don't compare me with Kenyamo and the rest of them. This country is in need of a political activist president who understands activism and politics for the sake and for the good of the people of Nigeria. So all of these are things that can be addressed equally. But what you have not mentioned, because you worked at 90, is that oil companies are owing us $6.4 billion they haven't paid in debts. If they paid us, we wouldn't have to be running to China to be borrowing money. And that will show
Mr.
our own local security.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Engineer Sani, over to you, please.
The issue of insecurity cannot be separated from the poverty, that has been visited on Nigerians. And the issue of corruption, like I've always said, it's endemic, especially if you look at the two sectors of the economy that matter in how to govern a nation. You look at the armed forces, you look at the major sector of the economy. And when you're looking at major sector of the economy today, you cannot but look at NNPC. And unfortunately for us today in this country, the two sectors that matter are under the Commander-in-Chief, which is Mr. President. And in those sectors, you have endemic corruption. So even the money to now fund the security outfit so that they can be effective is stolen, in a manner that you wonder whether these are Nigerians, whether they even understand the fact that there is God and they will account, after they have finished their time here. And what I'm saying is that you need to have a working security architecture. You have to have a policy. You have to have the standards of application of your policy. To do what? One is to avoid risks, to identify threats, and then to take action when there's an incident. That is missing in Nigeria's security outfit. It is missing because of corruption, because there is nobody that is in charge effectively. Nobody has been punished for all these things. No matter how much money you put there, if you do not have discipline in the security. We've heard of cases of service chiefs that have stolen so much money, people have come out, and then what happened? They were rewarded with appointments, instead of being punished. So how, in that sense, can you get security in the country? So this is where we must begin, to be able to govern, and then govern, like I said, rule of law will be our mantra. Because if you have rule of law, everybody now, will comply.
Your time is up, sir.
The same,
Thank you.
Rules applied.
Professor Mwadi, I'd like to come to you now to answer Mr. Waziri Adio's question, please, sir.
Thank you. I would honestly say, let us not shy away from the question of insecurity itself. Overwhelm insecurity. Then you begin to talk about the ancillary issues of what else causes it. In other words, the direct confrontation of getting to an old woman, an old man who is farming, and deal with him and make him run away from his farm. So where is government? Who is coming to stop that from repeating? That's it. Let's tackle insecurity head on. Let's win the war. Let's be on top of the situation. Then we can begin to talk about ancillary issues. You talk about porous borders, and we'll talk about not knowing where the border actually is. It's because we have not been sincere. You see, going forward, if Nigeria wants to be a strong nation, we have to define ourselves and say, okay, it doesn't matter. If I'm president, I will say, let's start from whoever that is here. I had a friend. When I left school, I went to see him at Idiroko. He was in customs. And he took me to the border. He said to me, Peter, well, let me not say exactly what he said for decency. But he said, put anything in the bag. Anything, just put it in the bag. I'll cross it here for you. That is through the custom border. Not to talk about, like I said, the numerous tracks that people access day and night. That's at Idiroko. We hear what is happening in the north. It doesn't exist. So, but is that how a country should be run? We are not sincere. So we have to draw a line somewhere and then get on the head of what is the problem. And then when you've done with that, you
Professor
begin to do the
Mwadi,
rest.
Your time is up, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Prince Adebayo, over to you.
Okay, there are 5 things we need to do, and we can get the rest straight. 1, we should stop using law enforcement to solve political problems. So there's no reason why Nnamdi Kanu should be facing DSS or police. His problem is political. So stop using political solutions and making them look like law enforcement. Because of lack of truth and lack of justice in this country is creating tension. But a good head of state will apply political solutions. Remember, there was a time the army was fighting with the chief in the First Republic. It never resolved anything. The Republic collapsed. So we deal with that. Secondly, the government itself has to know that you can't have a lot of ungoverned spaces in the country. Yesterday, I was at Mubi. I went to the border with Cameroon. I came down to Song Hong, all the way down. I didn't see the Nigerian army until I got to Jalo Cantonment in Yola. So, and if you go to Magadali, there's a warfare going on there. So I look at that sector, it shows to me that the footprint of the army is very thin. Third point, if you look at the community, I had meeting with community leaders all over Adamawa State. Within the community, they had solutions to their problem. I spoke with the emir, I spoke with the vigilante people. So there's anything that is confusing us here in the elite class does not confuse them. They showed me their defense mechanism. They showed me why they were able, because I was sitting down and eating at a place where Boko Haram had its headquarters. And I was asking them, how can you be here? They said, this is what we do. The fourth thing we need to do is to ensure that those who are in government do not enjoy proceeds of insecurity. Until you address that, because that's where they have all their billions coming from. Until you address that, and as Commander-in-Chief, I will address that effectively. I will not do my politics using security money, which is what they do now. That is where I start showing leadership, and I will not bring politicians into the security architecture to raise money for the next election. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you. We'll take the second panelist question. Kemi Okonyedo, Executive Director, Partners, West Africa. We will go straight to her for the next panel question. You've got 2 minutes, please. I'm on 2 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. From all that we've said, it seems like the security architecture as we have it is quite limited. And we're seeing the impact of that. And we've also seen at the subnational and at the regional level emergence of new security architectures in the likes of the Ebubeagus and the likes of the Amotekus. Do you think these structures need to come under one platform? And if yes, what are your plans in bringing all the structures together? If no, why?
Thank you. Mr. Omoyele, you go first.
Thank you. We do not need to bring any security architecture that is extra-legal at this point under any umbrella. I think what the states are telling us is that Nigeria is ripe for that restructuring we've been asking for. And because we delayed it, governors are acting on their own. But the creation of sometimes rogue security units would never help Nigeria. So what I would encourage us to do, and what I want to do, is to junket the 1999 constitution created by the military. Let the Nigeria nation create its own its own constitution that is not a fraudulent document as we have now. And that constitution will address the issue of state police, address the issue of local government police, address the issue of even campus police. Every of these units should be able to have their security units. Where I live in the US, the town where I live is not up to 3,000 people. They have their own police with 7 vehicles. I'm sure they probably have more vehicles than some state police commands in Nigeria. I'm exaggerating. Fact checkers, you don't have to worry about that. Yes. But the truth is that until we fix that constitution and allow states, local governments, towns, cities to have their own security units and not the ones controlled or formed by governors who, whenever nobody's watching, will go and use them to rig election or beat up people. Because if we do that, then we can train all of these police units in a unified way. And the federal police can intervene if they go rogue. There's no need to put them under the federal mercenary system we call security now.
All right, thank you so much for that. Engineer Yabaga Sani of the Action Democratic Party. Your response to that question.
Well, I think as a government, I will not allow a situation where you have regional, police that were formed out of desperation, because why? If you do that, it's a recipe for disembankment of the country itself, because this security outfit came out of frustration. It's not something that was discussed on the basis of the need to have it as a nation. So I will not allow that to happen. What I will do is to allow the Constitution to take its course, meaning that if you look at the Constitution we have in this country, it's a living document. The National Assembly members are supposed to, whenever the need arises, do the needful, which is to either look at the exclusive legislative list of the Constitution and take what does not belong there anymore because of the time that has passed and things have changed, and put it on concurrent list, like the state police we are talking about. The National Assembly should deal effectively with that, not out of frustration. Segments of the country will now bring out their own security outfit. Those will be outfits that will be antagonizing the national security that you are trying to solve, which means it is a wrong way to go. And the way to address all these things is still issue of poverty. If we have today almost 70% of Nigerians out of job, you have another 35% that of 50% that are vulnerable. You cannot have security in such an environment. So I will tackle the issue of poverty, and then tackle the issue of insecurity.
Thank you so much, Engineer Sani there. Professor Peter Omedi of APGA, 2 minutes, sir.
Yes, thank you. I support the creation of state police, which will mean amending this constitution at item number 45 in the exclusive legislative list. Down in our laws, there are room for local government police. And about the vigilantes that are coming up across the country, they should be allowed to operate. But the critical question is how they can effectively work with arms. And then that is the conundrum where headsmen have AK-47, and then people who are fashioned to secure towns and villages are denied the same. But there's something, let me put it with all respect, that I'm tinkering with. Could we give military training to people going to youth service corps 8 months out of 12 months and begin a regime to beef up our people? We are a bit too docile. And when they think they can take us for anything they want, then they can storm your home. But if you know there's a young man here who has been through military training for 8 months in his youth service, you will think twice about getting into that house. And then we'll begin to become a better, a more strengthened society.
Okay.
I have more minutes. So that's where I'm looking at. So if we look at it, and then it's something to go by, then I'll go for it.
It's time up. Thank you so much for your ideas. Prince Adewale Adebayo. And before you answer, please, we'll take 2 questions from the audience for gender balance, male and female. Please, when we come to you with a microphone, no long narrative, no long explanation. Kiss it. Keep it short and simple, straight to the point, a minute each. Then we'll come back to the panel here to answer them. Please, get ready. Thank you, sir.
Let us not run away from forming a government. At the federal level, there is an existing constitution that I'm going to swear on May 29 to uphold. Within that constitution, I have all it takes to eliminate crime. And the 2 steps to take to eliminate crime is to eliminate crime within government. That is the hardest thing to do in Nigeria. One of the reasons why we don't have an efficient police system is that if we had an efficient police system, half of those who are in government will be in jail. So it is not in the interest of government as it is today to have an effective police. But they need the police for VIP protection. So I will make that difference. Now, if you remove criminality from the street, I need to create ad hoc mechanism to deal with it will not arise. If there were no herdsmen killing farmers and no farmers retaliating by rustling cattle or killing cattle, there will be no crisis in the land. So the first thing for me as president is to ensure that I deliver the federal mandate. The second stage is for long-term peace of the country, is to talk to Nigerians, especially those in parliament, at the federal and state level, to see where we can create a system where the policing is done at the level closest to where the crime is. There is no reason for someone who lost his cattle in Funtua to have to come to Abuja to seek police help. Or somebody in Okeogun who is a farmer who is being attacked by a herdsman to come and call the IG of police in Abuja. We deal with that. But the most important thing happening in this country today is that law enforcement and rule of law must go away from the hand of the government to a police and judicial system that is independent of the government. And that's the mechanism that I'm going to put in place.
Thank you very much to our presidential candidates for your responses to the panelist questions. We are now going to turn to the audience, and the audience are going to pose questions to you. Please note that, again, you have 2 minutes to answer the audience questions. We'll start off by taking 2 questions. We'll come to you for your responses, and then we'll go back to the audience for another 2 questions and back to you for your responses. Audience members, hands up if you would like to ask questions to the presidential candidates this evening.
No, I have mic. Thank you. Good evening, Excellencies. My name is Sidney Usman Godwin, and my question is directed to the presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Mr. Omoyele Sowore. So, I've watched you over time on the streets of Nigeria demanding for the betterment of this country and the future generation. And importantly, in tackling insecurity, it's well-founded education. And I've heard your claims over time on ways to fund education. There have been denials to those facts. I want you to state that beyond every imaginary doubt that we have the resources to fund education. And first of all, can education eliminate insecurity in Nigeria? If yes, how best should it be given to Nigerians and prepared for future generation? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sowore. Just hold on for a moment. You'll answer that question in just a minute. We'll take one more question from our audience this evening before we get answers, please.
Thank you. I'm privileged. My question goes straight to the first. My name is M.I. Ada. My question goes to Mr. Sowore. Now, as a border rat and a political activist, how do you assure Nigerians that information, some on your platform, that are not true and are unverified, how can you be in the seat of president without telling Nigerians, just as you do now, on information that are not true and unverified? Instance are some presidential candidate and the sitting president, and the last memorable one is the one of Professor Zainab Tok Abiola, who is presently on your platform. Can we now be sure that you are not agent of CIA, or that you can not undermine the concern of Nigeria when you are made a president, the way you undermine the concern of your profession, to tell Nigeria what ought not to be? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. No clapping, please. A reminder, no clapping this evening, please. Audience, we will come back to you for more questions.
I want to answer that very clearly. No, I'm not a CIA agent. If I was, Buhari would have disappeared from the surface of the earth when he detained me. You can't do that to a CIA agent. I'm a Nigerian who never even accepted a US citizenship, even though I lived there for 20 years. And you talked about the fact that you found information on my platform. I think you're talking about Sahara reporters. That is not true about the president. You didn't say which one is not true. Is it the fact that he was sick and we reported it, that he will spend months in the UK? Is it the fact that he's sitting on a corrupt government? Is it the fact that he has used his position to enrich the cabal that works for him? Which of it? Is it the fact that there's corruption in the NNPC? Is it the fact that they gave jobs to their children in the Central Bank of Nigeria, while the children of the poor cannot get jobs? You didn't come up with anything. You are talking about one Dr. Abiola, I don't know the person. I've not written for Sahara Reporters in a long time. I spent time in jail, you know. I couldn't have been writing Sahara Reporter stories from detention. I was confined to Abuja for 3 years. I couldn't have been writing for, I can write from anywhere, no doubt, but I have not been doing Sahara Reporters. I know probably you came with the Dr. Abiola because she was arrested, I heard, because her police orderly was battered. This is not where to prosecute that. Go to the IG's office. The other part of it, please, I want to speak about is education. It's very important to me. And the best way to address it first and foremost is budgeting. That we meet the budget that has been prescribed for education. We need education, and I believe education can solve crime, the right education. Because some people who are also involved in crime are educated, a lot of them, especially those in government. Serious education, serious criminals. So education don't automatically wipe out crime, but education can help uplift people and can create citizens that can build their countries out of poverty. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. No clapping once again. No clapping. I know it's kind of instinctive to want to clap, but please, try it. No clapping. We'll take more questions. Preferably now, we'll like the ladies. We'll take 2 questions from the audience, preferably the ladies. Do we have any lady in the house? So let's put the roving microphone round, and we take these questions.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Omolola Pedro, and my question is directed at all the candidates seated here. Considering economy, like we are discussing today, and security, what exactly are the plans in place in relation to the female gender? Apart from economic insecurity or social insecurity, we also know that the female gender most of the times are targeted by violent people. Most of the times, the female gender suffers insecurity just because they are females. What are the plans, or what is the plan you have to ensure that females, particularly considering the level at which we suffer insecurity in the country, what are the plans you have? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very good question there, I should say. Can we take another one by another female? We've got preference for them, for balancing sake.
Ladies, we want to hear from you.
Ladies, we want to hear from you, please. We got another one. Please, who is pushing the mic around? Okay, we'll take somebody else if we don't have a lady. I can see somebody out there raising his hands. Yeah, we'll come to him. Thank you.
Are you with me now?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Alex Mayanga, MNI. My question is for all the presidential candidates. I've thought over the years that some Nigerian presidents have 2 jobs. One, they are the president of the country. Second, they step down to become ministers. For instance, Minister for Petroleum. I want to know, by the time you get into the office, would you still maintain these 2 jobs? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. So we go through all the candidates, 2 minutes each once again. Please, audience, no clapping. We'll start with you, Mr. Omoyele Sowore, and we terminate at Prince Adewale. Okay, he just finished answering, so let me come to the extreme. Prince Adewale Adebayo, you should start first.
Okay, with respect to the female question, we have to have equality, and the way to have equality is to have a system that doesn't look at your gender to start with, so that opportunities are given equally. Second is to have a way to create equity. Equity is that in some areas, the women have been disadvantaged over time. So with respect to, for example, school enrollment, opportunity for job, flexibility in the workplace, and ensuring that women, crimes that are towards women, violent crime, sexual crimes, exploitation, those ones are given emphasis. But the clear thing to do to make the women comfortable is to have a government where you don't feel denied of anything because you're a woman. So I need to let us understand that. With respect to the president who stepped down and become Minister of Petroleum, the problem is that those who have done it, they don't even do either of the job. They don't do the president job, they don't do the Minister of Petroleum job. Otherwise, if you did your job as president, you're automatically Minister of everything. So you will supervise everything. But if you look at it, it's because of the way the politics is designed. They go for where the money is, the juicy thing, where it goes. So whoever produces the Minister of Petroleum, CBN governor, finance minister, somebody in charge of security, is controlling 90% of the money in the government. So even if he was a school sat dropout, you will see people going to their house to worship them. So they are fighting among themselves as to who's going to control the money. Okay. But effectively for me as president is to make sure that I have top people who can manage each sector. And for petroleum, I know about 70 or 75 people who are very good and who are patriotic, who will manage it very well. So are other sectors.
Thank you so much. We'll come to you, Professor Mehdi.
Thank you. Gender issues are sensitive and we ought to look at them. And even in the Constitution, as Section 42, it talks about freedom from discrimination, but that is far from what you see in reality. And then we'll talk about a 35% employment rate in government, even by the Nigerian gender policy. It's been knocked down in a court recently. But effectively, I wouldn't want to, I want to rope it up with children, especially because I did a lot of work since 2008 when we tried to entrench the Child Rights Act. We had that pilot seminar in Kaduna. Now, as I'm speaking, 11 states in Nigeria have not domiciled the Child Rights Act. I have a passion for it. And those 11 states are in the north. But it does not remove the fact that all over the country, both in the north and in the south, there are children hawking day and night, carrying on their head what money you cannot use for a bottle of 2 bottles of beer. And they go round the place every day on that. You see, we should not allow that. So the vulnerability of the woman will also be done together with that of the child. And the other one, I burnt all my time about the president being minister.
Yeah, working 2 jobs, being Minister of Petroleum, but you've got limited time.
No, I won't do that. I'll concentrate on being president of Nigeria.
Thank you so much. Engineer Yagbasoni will come to you real quickly. Mr. Omoyele, if you can answer in just about a minute 2 of the questions put together, because you had answered some questions before now.
Yes, to answer the question of gender balancing, I think we have an affirmative policy which says that women should be given 35% of the positions in government. I think I will uphold that and then ensure that I also work with National Assembly to ensure that as many women as possible get into the Assembly, so that when they are making the laws that will protect everybody, they will also ensure that the gender issue is addressed properly. Then number 2, the issue of Mr. President becoming a minister of a particular ministry. I don't think it's necessary. The president is supposed to be a leader. He leads. He is supposed to identify managers, people that are effective, that are experts, that have track records, and all the ministers are actually exercising the powers of the president. It's delegated to them. So whoever is the minister is like a president in the ministry where he's supervising. So there will be no need for that. What will be needed is you give them KPIs. I will ensure that I have feedback. I will ensure that I engage with them as often as possible. I will ensure that they are doing the things they're supposed to do so that Nigerians will have impact of my presidency. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your time. Mr. Omoyele.
Thank you. I think the problem started where women started accepting percentages in representation. I looked at the election roll, INEC election roll recently. There are more women in this country who are qualified to vote than men. When are women going to, nominate a woman, vote for the person, and force your husband to vote for a woman, and solve this problem of equality at once? Why am I saying it? Nigeria has a ministry for women affairs. I've never heard of a ministry for man affairs before. But there was a time in this city, Abuja, that I think it was in the APC, that a man was applying to be voted into the women's leader position. In Adamawa State, a commissioner of women affairs was a man under Bindo. So we have domesticated the idea of discrimination against women, and women have accepted it for too long. Let them rise up and stop accepting 35%. If you are not 35% of the population, if you are almost 51% of the population, 50-something% of voters, why are you accepting 35% representation in government? You have accepted and internalized this oppression, and it's gone on for too long. To solve it, stop accepting it. Revolt against it, women, so that you can take over for some time too. Men have been in power for too long, and they've messed up our world. Time for women to rise up and take their place. The issue of being a minister well, you all know that being a minister is the only ministry they are interested in is oil. If you really want to be a minister as a president, try being minister of tourism, so that you oversee all the tourist centers that have been abandoned. Then I will know that you are serious. Because it's just, governance in this country is a joke, and that's one of the reasons why it is a big joke.
Mr. Shawara, thank you. Thank you to all presidential candidates for your responses to the questions from the audience. Straight into questions on the economy. Nigeria's economic crisis is a structural one. I'm sure that is something that we can all agree on. Our factories are all import dependent, such that any forex crisis has an immediate impact across the country. As president, how will you build Nigeria's primary industries, namely steel, petrochemicals, and agro-allied industries, to reduce Nigeria's dependence on imports? This time around, we are going to start from this side of the stage. Prince Adebayo, you have 3 minutes to answer, please.
What I'm going to do is to stop believing in these wrong assumptions. The highest consumption of our foreign exchange is the government. Recently, it was the news when I raised alarm that majority of the money that's supposed to come in from oil is being stolen. So what consumes our money is the inability to account for the money we're entitled to, whether it's in petroleum, whether in solid minerals, whether it's in overflight rights and fees, whether it is in government revenue, whether it's in taxation. So once you do that, that's number one. Number two, I'm going to do is to make sure that I put an economist, not a cashier, in the central bank. So when you have an economist in the central bank, it doesn't work for the government, it works for the economy. So the government is also a player, like any other person in the economy. Government does buy and selling. So it will ensure that the government can only spend money it can earn. The same way I can walk to the central bank and collect money, the president should not be able to walk there and collect money. So once you do that on the fiscal side, it means that the government will not be disciplined to receive its revenue. And the ideal thing for the government to do is to ensure that it has a balanced budget. If it doesn't have, if it has a surplus, we're happy, we'll take it and give to the private sector. If it wants to go and have deficit, it will have central bank to contend with, because I have to defend the value of the naira in terms of purchasing power parity and inflation. I also have to defend the naira against foreign exchange instability. That way, I will not allow them to have instruments for quantitative easing. Right now, this governor of central bank is a cashier for anybody who is in government. I will stop that. The third thing I'm going to do is to ensure that full employment is the objective of both monetary and fiscal policy. You must assure that you can get full employment, which means you take it to single digit, 5% or anything below. That's categorized as full employment. How do I do that? I made sure that we invest in agriculture before I go into steel, because steel has a lot of foreign component. That was why I couldn't finish at Jakarta. So what you do is go to the low-hanging fruit, go into agriculture, and the land is everywhere. I was in Adamawa, I saw all of that. So if you go to Kimba people alone, they can grow enough coconut groundnut for you to compete with NNPC. I'm a farmer. I have an oil plantation. I sell my palm oil for $600 per barrel. NNPC is struggling with $80 per barrel, and they're stealing everything. So what we need to do is to do that. Second is to make sure that we comply with Chapter 2 of the Constitution, invest in social services. We have enough money to invest in social services if the government people can live modestly. People who are ministers can live like school teachers, like look at school principals. We will invest money in education, in health, in housing, and that can be done. If you're building 100,000 houses in every state a year, you will be able to do that in 4 years, and you have enough employment. We do infrastructure and roads. And then you attract foreign investment to see that no country relies on appropriation only
Prince
for
Adebayo,
economy.
your time is up. Thank you, sir. Professor Umuadi, over to you. As president, how will you rebuild or build Nigeria's primary industries to reduce Nigeria's dependence on imports, sir?
Yeah, the issue that will take my attention immediately is to impress the power of the states over that of anybody else. And then the farmers can go back to the farms, and we'll build up our agriculture, because now all the farms are deserted. And then you begin to talk about social progress. You are talking about how to maximize potentials of the people. There are a lot of things happening when you have an index of countries who have done well in social progress, and you find countries that don't have that much money, but who have done a lot of social spending, especially in housing, getting to an appreciable level when you begin to evaluate countries like that. And the last time I looked at it, Nigeria was on the bottom with Ethiopia. Small countries like Costa Rica were in the middle. And even Costa Rica with South Africa, that was richer than Costa Rica was doing better, because they were concentrating on how to alleviate poverty and how to sustain their people. And then you begin to talk about what we do with education, how we can get into skills acquisition, so that you take the German model. If you take the German model, what you do is that people get up to a level, and then they can branch off into technical preferences, and then you have skill acquisition centers, and they begin to create employment for themselves and generate employment for other people. And then those on the other lane that want to go on to white-collar jobs continue to the school to the end of the point. So with that, the government cannot do everything. And then you begin to lessen the burden of government on what to cater for. Of course, when you are into agriculture and it's sustainable, you get food for the people, then you can move on, and then you have enough for export, and then you can generate foreign exchange. And then that way, you have a sustainable country.
Thank you. Before we move on to our next two presidential candidates, we would really like to take this question again. We're not sure it's been answered as well as it could have been and focused on the question as it could have been. So I'm going to ask the question again. Prince Adebayo and Professor Umuadi, if you could give us your responses again, that would be much appreciated. Nigeria's economic crisis is a structural one. All of our factories are import dependent, such that any forex crisis has an immediate impact across the country. As president, how will you build Nigeria's primary industries, namely steel, petrochemicals, and agro-allied industries, to reduce Nigeria's dependency on imports, says?
We solved this problem under Balewa. So I don't know why we are looking like something new. Under Balewa, we had what we call import substitution. That was why they dreamed of Ajaokuta, Alaja Steel, Okuiboku, so that we don't import newsprint. They talk about aluminum smelting plant in Nikorabasi. All these things are in the first development plan, 1960 to 65. So it's nothing new. What is happening? You can write another one. I've read Vision 2010, Vision 2020. There can be anything. You have to have a government that has discipline. If you look at what happened when we had the Civil War, we had a very strong central bank where the governor would not even allow Gawan to take money from the central bank to pay for ammunition. He said, it's not your money. Eventually, Awolowo had to go and look for Provident Fund money in London. When you don't have institutions, all these plans will not work. When you have a central bank in Nigeria where somebody walked into and took money, and for 2 decades now, we are trying to recover that money. Where you have an economy in which majority of the money raised from petroleum is stolen automatically. So what I'm trying to address is that we have the answer already, but I need to create a government that will allow that to work. And to work, the monetary policy has to be such that the central bank is in charge of money supply, is in charge of pricing of money, interest rate, and all of that, and inflation. And on my own side, I have a government that can account for the even 10 naira of Nigeria's money. So if you have that, what will happen is this.
Prince Adebayo, I don't mean to interrupt you here. If you were to become Nigeria's president, what plan do you have to build and develop Nigeria's steel industry, Nigeria's petrochemicals industry, and Nigeria's agro-allied industry, sir?
The plan is this. First, you need to have what we call project management. Why is it the one that we tried to build before? Why are they not completed? This is the reason. One, what happened is this. There were breaches of contract. So the Russians came to build Ajaokuta. Now, I'm not going to call the Russians back to build Ajaokuta because I've realized that I can't fund it. So what I need to do immediately is to ensure that first, I create an economy where I can attract investment into my economy. So to do that, I need to have a stable exchange rate. I'm not talking $1 to $1. No, I'm not going to come now and repeat the same mistake Shagari made, where he went to many contracts, including Korabas and all of that. When Buhari came illegally, what did they discover? They discovered that they couldn't pay for the second tranche or third tranche of the payment. So we went into debt. We did arbitration all over the world. So what I'm trying to correct now is to change the architecture and say, now we are lucky that new industries have come up. We can do agro-allied industries. We can do alternative energy, which I'm very good at. We can invest in our social structure and actually get our people employed first. Have very good hospitals, train doctors, train sailors, and earn income from the intellect. The first Republic plan was based on 19th century economy that was heavy industry dependent. All over the world now, Singapore, UK, anywhere, they are working on what we call comparative advantage. I believe that we have steel, we can work on it, but that is secondary for me. The primary is that you must be able to feed yourself, you must have a stable economy, you must keep inflation at single digit, and you must keep unemployment at low single digit. If you do that, the next generation will do industry and will do all of that.
Professor Omoyadi, let me come back to you now. As president, how will you build Nigeria's primary industries, namely steel, petrochemicals, and agro-allied? Please, sir, also consider the fact that if you were to become Nigeria's next president, you are likely going to be working with a budget that could have a fiscal deficit of between 11.3 to 12.41 trillion naira. How will you build Nigeria's main primary industries to reduce the country's dependency on imports?
Thank you very much. Then the issue has to be, with utmost respect, do I have to go the same way that has been done, which didn't work? Do I have to bog myself down to that? Must I build all those industries you mentioned if I'm in trouble? I don't think so. And that is the pragmatic aspect of governance. You see, the point about a situation like this where we are in is like a lot of things get said. The other week in Britain, there was a new prime minister, and when he came on board, and there were asking him to roll out what he will do, and he shifted it for about 6 weeks, and they were asking why, and they said, you made promises the last time you were here saying what you will do. He said, well, I want to find out what is deliverable. That is the point. So at a point, you begin to see what is deliverable. So I'm more impressed with the social progress of issues. I'm more impressed with the human capital development. I'm more impressed in getting a starting point. Like I said when I began, ABGA is about starting afresh. So I may not tell you now the works I'm going to do to get factories that all have steel, that have all gotten rotten there, and they're not functioning, and then perhaps I have to remove all of them and bring new machines and bring new steel plants and all that, and then begin to work on that. I do not think I have to bog myself down to repeating that. What I'm going to do is to get on with agriculture, but before I get on with agriculture, conquer the issue of insecurity. Get our people, you see, because the informal sector, for instance, doing what they're doing, if you add what the president had done recently, the Startup Act, which he just signed into law, bringing IT, and bringing a lot of dividends from there. And these are the things that can earn you money quickly, very much quickly, that you're now going on another lane. That is how I look at it.
Thank you. Engineer Sani, over to you now. How would you, as president, build Nigeria's primary industries to ensure that Nigeria is no longer dependent on imports, such that any forex crisis has an immediate impact in the country?
Well, very importantly, we need to build the agriculture sector, because it is normally the mainstay of any economy. It contributes more to GDP if it is developed properly. But the question you ask is that today in Nigeria, if you're talking about Nigeria we have today, you have to deal with the issue of debts. We are paying almost 119% of our revenue to service debts, not even paying the debts yet, interest. And agriculture sector, steel sector, all the sectors I've mentioned, which are the primary sectors, fundamental to every economy, you need the money to invest. And this money cannot come in form of any aids anymore. You can't even borrow anymore, to the point that almost at the tipping point. So I think what I will do is to look inward first. Let me address the issue of corruption. The gentleman here, Mr. Adio, was in Haiti, as executive secretary. We know what Haiti is telling us, that every year we're losing close to $4 billion to some losses that we can't even account for. So if we have an industry that has comparative advantage, you are talking about the fundamentals of the economy, why don't we look at comparative advantage where we have them? Why don't you organize that sector properly so it can feed agriculture, steel, and education, infrastructure development, which is needed in the economy? We can't go a borrowing, or otherwise we go a sorrowing. That's what the saying goes. So as a president, I will ensure that I maximize what I can get for what God has given to me. Energy still is something that is sought after. So for our administration, we have our policy thrust will be based on 3 planks. 1, energy transition, climate change, information technology. Energy transition, like climate change today, COP27 is going on today in Egypt. There are so much hanging fruits that we can get. They are talking about $100 billion that are going to bring to countries like Africa. They are going to invest then in areas like agriculture, because that is the devastation from the climate change is also more in agriculture actually than any other thing. So I'll be able to attract money to, first of all, pay the debts. We have to address the issue of debts before this country can be what it's supposed to be. So I will build those industries because I need them, for us to have the fundamentals right. But the issue of corruption, the issue of debt, the issue of paying subsidy of almost, I don't know, we are 6 trillion naira for subsidy, which we can solve. So I will first of all be realistic with myself that I have a problem, a domestic problem to build these industries, you say. But how do I solve them? Tackle corruption. Take advantage of a comparative industry that you have. That's what everybody does. Singapore, Malaysia, all these things we talk about, they take advantage of where they have comparative advantage.
Thank you, Engineer Sani. Thank you very much. Last but not least, Mr. Showore, over to you. What is your action plan? How will you build Nigeria's primary industry to reduce the country's dependency on imports? Emphasis on how, sir.
Thank you very much. There is no point putting the cart before the horse. We must remain dynamic. I am not going to invest in the past. And what is the past? Building steel industries that don't produce steel. When you don't have energy, you can't even run a steel company. You don't have electricity. You are not talking about that first. Second, you are talking about petrochemical industries. Oil is going to dry up. Why are you building petrochemical industries? Fix the refineries that are around for the duration of the lifespan of oil. Start to think into the future. The most important industry we should be thinking about is the human brain, human capital development. The industries that bring the most money in the world today is tech. A guy who didn't have a taxi is running taxis all over the world, called Uber, Bolt. A guy who didn't have a physical supermarket, Amazon, is running an economy that is 20 times more than Nigeria's GDP, one man, because they invested in their brains. You want to invest in steel, and you then appoint a minister of power to steal all the money, strip the assets, and then we are back 10 years later, oh, we haven't completed that steel industry that Mr. Showore promised. No, I'm not going to do that. Invest in petrochemical industry, pollute your environment, kill more people when oil has a short lifespan. People are already using electricity to drive their cars. Yes, we can fix the ones we have so that we don't help individuals who want to build their own to complete them. What we need to be talking about is that product of the future. That is what Showore is going to invest in. And we should not sit down here and say steel is primary industry, agro industry is primary industry, when now what is known as agriculture can be, you can grow crops without entering a bush. Yes, you can have ranches instead of this herdsmen killing people that can help you produce electricity. Cow dung can produce biofuel. People don't know that in this country. They are stuck in the past. That is why I keep saying it. Stop voting for analog brains who think, or because we have entered into a digital future. Vote for the future. Stop voting for the past. And when you say how, if you vote for people who know the products of the future, it's how, where all itself comes in a small package, and that is the manuals of these products. And I'm not going to sit down here and tell you, be forced into a corner to say, I'm going to build one agro industry somewhere that is processing a product that is going out of business.
Thank you, Mr. Showore. Looking towards the future and not the past. Thank you to all of our presidential candidates for your answer to that particular question. I am going to hand the mic back to Mr. Waziri Adio, who has another question to pose to you today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Agora Policy, which I work for, also published a report on the state of the economy titled Options for Revamping Nigeria's Economy. And that report puts the fiscal crisis that we face as a country today in a sharp focus. It took a 10-year look between 2011 and 2021, and it shows that expenditure increased by 179%, actual revenue increased by only 81%, and you can already see a gap. And that translated to debt that increased by 436%. And that does not include the ways and means that increased by more than 7,000%. Also, what is clear there is that we have a debt problem. We also have a revenue problem. We generate one of the lowest revenue to GDP ratio in the world. Our revenue to GDP ratio for the federal government is 4.4%. lower than even the one of our poorest neighbors. So the question I want to ask you now is that what exactly are you going to do in specific terms to tackle the issue of debt, to tackle the issue of low revenue, to tackle the issue of deficits, and other things around the fiscal space? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adio. Let's start in the middle of the stage this time. Engineer Sani, we can start with you. What is your response, please, sir?
Well, to tackle the economic problems for Nigeria, believe you me, is the easiest thing to do. And I say easiest thing to do because today the whole world is into the narrative that serves Nigeria best of all the countries you can think of, which is the issue of energy transition. We're a gas country. We can take advantage of this, what the world is doing today, moving from fossil fuel to the renewable energy, and then using gas as the intermediary, transition energy. Europe today is looking for where they can get this gas. We are building Ajakuta, AKK. All we need was just $2.8 billion. Today, Naiti says we are losing close to $5 billion a year. So we can build twice, 3 times what we of AKK to serve the Trans-Saharan, gas pipeline, go into the European markets and make a lot of money. I know you may say this is a long-term, business, but long-term, yes, but investment can start coming in now as we speak. You look at the climate change. Like I said, the COP27 is there. They are promising us, money. There's issue of adaptation. There are issues of mitigation. We can engage effectively and even get some of our debts paid. I watched your program where you talked about how to address the coastal areas where some countries have even used that to pay their debts. So our economy is the economy that is there for you to really grow if you have the knowledge. Information technology is also one of the policy tools that we have. Human capital, Nigeria is blessed. We have the African continent as a whole. We have young, dynamic, intelligent young men that today, all these startup technologies we're talking about, somebody sits in his bedroom and is making billions, So Nigeria, we are a country that, believe you me, we're supposed to be greater than what we are today. And give me the leadership, believe you me, we will be able to catch up and surpass even those that started with us in the past. So how
Engineer
is that
Sani,
I'm going to take advantage?
Your time is up, sir.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you. Professor Umuadi, we'd like your response to this question, please.
Yes, thank you. There is paucity of tax collection in Nigeria. We must accept that. So for we to get more money from tax, we'll have to be up and doing. Invariably, the civil servants bear the brunt of direct taxation because there is pay as you earn, and that is gotten. But I think beyond that, we're not doing enough in harvesting tax from countrymen who are getting profit from the businesses they do. Many of them are underdeclared, unlike places where people sit in the comfort of their homes and assess themselves and pay their tax. But they do all that because there are sanctions and because there are people who can find out if you don't tell the truth about your situation. And these are the things we'll have to learn. So if we want to bring about a new country, we'll have to focus on the little things. We'll have to forget the grandiose things we'll talk about. And then those things that will make people know this is your level and this is what you will pay. And then the tax authorities will have to fashion out ways to go and collect those taxes because we need them. And of course, I take this opportunity to say that there's this skepticism about the people. Well, if you pay the tax, they're going to squander it. They're not going to use it well, unlike other places where everybody is sure that whatever is collected goes into for the public good. So first of all, we'll have to get the mechanism to collect the correct tax from the people who are taxable. It's part of our manifesto. Then you come up to the other issue you raised about debts, how to service your debts.
Professor, your time is up, sir. Thank you. Prince Adebayo, over to you, please, sir.
Okay, I've read the Agora report. It's a photograph taken from the left angle. And there are a lot of omissions in it. There are a lot of blind spots. And I will identify 3 of them. 1, it's based on secondary data. It takes the government record to be correct. So it's working on it. That's error number 1. Those figures are not correct at all. The government bookkeeping is terrible. Second, it doesn't have adjacent to it a curve, a shift in the curve that will show what is collected and what ought to have been collected. Maybe it's not in the mandate of those who commissioned the report to say the ideal figure, because if you don't know the variance, you will not know the potential that has been missed. The third component is that it takes these figures to not look at value for money component of the figure. So when the state government has spent 17 trillion, on what? So, and that brings me to debt. Debt in itself, as an absolute figure, it doesn't frighten me. The question is, if you borrow $10 million to set up a factory that earns you $2 million a year, I'm not as frightened as somebody who borrows $10,000 to drink tea. Because that person who borrowed $10,000 to drink tea is going to be in trouble because the tree he has taken is not going to bring money back. So what is happening? What I'm going to deal with is as follows. 1, I will capture every revenue that is not being captured now. In the Agora report, they didn't tell you how the Accountant General of the Federation, who's supposed to give us the figure, managed to steal 109 billion on his own without being in that report. So what I will do is to keep accurate records to ensure that that record is there. Secondly, to do amortization of our debt, to see that the debt structure is okay. Thirdly, to ensure that the gaps, there is a 16 trillion gap, which is not talked about, that about 12 men who are friends of people in government have taken. There's also another money, which will go to a bad bank called AMCON, which many big men borrow money from AMCON, and they're all looking like big men right now, and we are paid for it. So I will fill that gap, and you will see that we'll have enough money to grow the economy.
Your time is up, sir. Thank you. I'm sure our fact checkers are currently looking into your claims. We'll see what they come back with. Last but not least, Mr. Shaware, over to you. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Did you just give me 2 minutes instead of 3? Okay.
Everyone has had 2 minutes for this particular question.
Sure. I want to state clearly that our debt to GDP ratio is not out of control. Our problem is revenue to GDP. And it is because we don't capture our revenues appropriately. I want to refer to NITE's position on oil companies where my colleague, comrades, once worked, where I mentioned earlier that the oil companies are owing over $6.4 billion in taxes unpaid to the federal government. It was NITE's position, not Showere's position. There's a body known as RMAFC, the Revenue Mobilization Body, said, I think recently, that federal government agencies have 10 trillion naira unremitted revenue to the federal government. I'm going to go after that. I want to also inform you that what they call security vote today in Nigeria is one of the things we'd like to abolish, so that the 271 billion naira that goes to governors and also federal agencies, you'll be surprised that over 799 federal agencies also collect security votes. I don't know who they are protecting with it. We will abolish that. But most importantly, we must discuss our revenue, what we spend money on, waste, the amount of waste in this country. I have said it and I repeat it before Nigerians that I want to abolish the Senate so that we can use that money to take care of education. I will stop investing in irrelevant things. And with due respect, don't come after me for saying it. I don't want to spend a dime on pilgrimage. I'll use that money to, train our kids who are in school. And then ensure that we plug all the areas where corruption is happening now. Make sure we digitalize our country so that people cannot just, like the Accountant General, you said 109 billion. I thought I heard 150 billion that the man stole. By the time you go after all of them, you have more than enough money. Don't let everybody be deceiving us that Nigeria doesn't have money. We have money. Our problem is that the money is going to the greedy. Socialism for the rich. Capitalism for the poor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shore, for your time there and for your thoughts. We call on the second panelist, Kemi, Konyedo, Executive Director of Partners West Africa.
So the ensuing ecological challenges and food security in Nigeria and across the Sahel are projected to worsen. What new policies, measures, and programs do you want to put in place to address this in light of the extreme climatic conditions like floods, droughts, and even the violent conflicts? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll start from Professor Mehdi now, this time around.
Thank you. That environmental impact assessment is a good way to control what happens in our country. I've given an example of the Ogoni spill, and then Shell came up with the federal government and put up $10 million, and they're beating their chest. And you know what is happening in Ogoni would have started from as far back as 1958, and the whole place is mad with oil. I've been through to Abonima. I know what I saw. But look at the other side. In 2010, there was oil spill in Louisiana, and the BP had to pay within months to Barack Obama $15 billion. And they had to clear that length of the Gulf of Mexico, and then until all the sheen of the oil goes. So we will demand that they do that restoration, and that they pay the reparation, the money that for the cleanup. And then they also paid a lot of money. BP paid about $60 billion. If BP was not heavy at about $180 billion worth at that time, it would have gone under. So what we're going to do overall assessments.
Okay.
We're going to do overall assessments, and we're going to do not piecemeal, and we're going to do it from the community's perspective. Because when you talk about, I'm using this as an example, and it's going to happen all over Nigeria. If you go to where they are mining solid minerals, it's the same thing. They excavate land and they leave them like that, and nobody is bothered, nobody asks questions. But no, I'm not going to go that way. We're going to, everybody has to account for whatever exploitation they're making in Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Professor Engineer Yabusani.
Well, the issue of erosion, and those devastations that we are suffering today is a global phenomenon, like we know. And that's why, like I said before, we are having this COP, that is Conference of Parties, organized by UN, today taking place in Egypt. There's a lot of funds coming. It's just like pandemic, like what we had during the COVID, when the international community was, sending vaccines and what have you to developing countries. The same thing is happening today. So I'll key into that. COP28, my government will have a study that, and like even African Development Bank, I think they are also doing something towards how they can take advantage of the conference that's going on there, so that we can address some of these issues. Because the European countries know that if they don't help the developing countries, who in fact contribute less, we contribute less than 2.8% of the to the ozone layer depletion. I mean, to the global warming. And so that's why they are now bringing these intervention funds, which if we carry out the mitigation programs and then we ask them to do the adaptation for us, which will be the areas you have mentioned, I'm sure Nigeria is one country that can benefit immensely, because we are lucky. We have Dr. Adewumi there, who is the MD of the African Development Bank. World Trade too, they also are key into this. Okay. We have our own there, Dr. Okonjola, who is there. And then the UN itself, we have our own there too. So I don't know how Nigeria cannot come out tops on this in terms of addressing this environmental degradation. We have Amina, who is the Deputy Secretary, Secretary General of UN. So we should be able to tap into these funds and then really solve our problems. Because when you talk about Africa, Nigeria, of course, is number one. We are talking about Nigeria. So
Okay.
it's not a problem.
Thank you so much for your time. Omoyele Sowore, will come to you on this. Thank you.
Well, we've been getting the warning for a long time, but paid no attention. What is known as Lake Chad today suffered from climate change. The size of Lake Chad is 10% of what it used to be today. And the herdsmen that we now popularly talk about all the time were people who had foliage. The ecosystem there supported their business, because one thing people don't know or don't talk about a lot about the herdsmen crisis is that the meat industry is a $3 billion to $4 industry. So people survive on it. There are billionaires in that sector. They may not be fanciful, private jet flying people, but they make money. And the moment that place dried up to 10%, they started moving southward. And that is where you found the crisis that has now become part of our security problem. The rest of them are somehow man-made. The issue of the degradation and the oil pollution in Niger Delta was caused by oil companies that have been acting with impunity in Nigeria. And yes, the rest of the world is saying that they want to solve the climate change crisis, but we must also understand that without leaders who understand what is climate change, even accessing the funds that may be available in the future will not come to us the way we should get it, because they are the ones who should be paying us for creating a world that is unsafe because of their industrial and consumption habits. So we are the ones suffering some of these things. But we should look at what we did to ourselves. We now have about 9 states flooded, because in the 70s, Cameroon was going to create dams, that would bring about floods to Nigeria. Let me finish. And Nigerian leaders refused to do their own part of it. It would have been generating electricity.
Your time is up.
And it would have solved the flood issue.
Thank you so much.
As usual.
Thank you so much for your time. We'll come to you, Prince Adewale Adebayo.
Okay, there are 3 components to this climate issue and environmental issue. One is the climate justice, both international, between industrialized world and the under-industrialized world, also between the rich and the poor, between the urban people and people in the communities. So we need to understand that component, which is that if you do anything that impacts on people's livelihood in the environment, both domestically and internationally, we need to address that. Second issue is the climate economy. Even though people are shouting the world's coming to an end, it's an opportunity to create new jobs, to create new things that we didn't have before. For example, the investment made in solar technology and all of that, in windmills and other technologies, to ensure that while the environment is changing, we can still earn the same income and livelihood by changing the practices that we have. Third issue we need to understand is that it's also a trade issue. So you be careful while we are trying to save the world to ensure that you don't have a trade-off between your ability to develop your economy and not developing your economy and now waiting for handout by way of climate payoff. India has managed to create a very attractive argument that I find very useful. First thing you do is that you ensure that if the environmental changes require you to change certain industrial practices, you compensate by creating jobs elsewhere. Secondly, you ensure that in international negotiation, don't assume that because your citizens are there, that they are on your behalf, because international system trains citizens to work against their own country. So you have to ensure that domestically, we have our own plan and policy. Don't be fooled. Even if Nigerian is representing UN, it doesn't mean that it's going to fight for Nigeria. So that's what we need to do as a government to understand that.
Okay, thank you so much. So I'm going to throw this question in it. We've heard the arguments, and we talked about critical sectors to re-engineer the Nigerian economy. We talked about oil. And this question is to all the candidates. Power, for instance. How can Nigeria meet its power needs without oil and gas? We'll give you time to expatiate on this. How, precisely? Underline the word how. 3 minutes to expatiate on this. I will come to you, Engineer Sani, on this first. Then we take it up from there. How?
The whole world is moving towards renewable energy. So how is already available. It's just for us to now take advantage of what is required. And what is required is that you have willing partners outside who really want to invest in solar energy, windmills, and other sources of energy that, in fact, for Nigeria, we should be actually talking about solar energy because it's there for us for taking. We don't need to really...
How realistic is this conversation on renewable energy?
Well, the realistic aspect of it is the damage that we are suffering and the whole world, floods, all sort of degradation, all sort of agricultural negative impact we are having in that sector. So that they said, necessity is the mother of invention. We now have a necessity that will force the whole world. That's why the whole world is coming together to discuss. So we can really solve that problem if we get our act together. And that's what I'm saying, that renewable energy is where everybody is going today. I know it will take some years for us to really reach there. But even the issue of vehicle-powered batteries, we have the sand on those states here, and the sand there, are suitable for these silicon batteries and things like that. So we have an opportunity as a nation, really, to tap into this global trend that is happening today. Nigeria can do it, believe you me. And, which country is this? They rely more on solar energy than even the fossil fuel and other sources of energy. So we are talented Nigerians. Somebody mentioned, I was reading today, somebody who invented solar panels, in one state is going for a governorship, and they said because he did that, they should vote for him. So, and we have started this long time ago for this solar energy source as a source of energy for us to power our at least households, even if we can't power our industries for now because of the consumption. But I know that as this country so blessed, even if we, okay, you say without gas, I understand without
gas. Oil and gas.
Yes, without oil and gas. But even other sources, talk of windmill, talk of turbines, I'm talking about dams and things like that. We have so much of it in abundance. What is lacking is leadership. And that's what I'm here to give. That's why I should be voted, because I have the knowledge, I have the track record that I can do this. I'm an engineer, like I told you, and there's still engineering that deals with this kind of situations. Okay. So it can be done.
All right, I'll come to you, Mr. Shore, because this is very critical. Do you plan to meet Nigeria's immediate power needs without oil and gas, which is critical because when you look at sectors all over the world, majorly you still need oil and gas and fossil fuel. A clear example is the world went to COP26. Russian-Ukraine crisis happened. Germany was the first to go back to fire their coal power plants.
Well, you must admit that we are lucky in this part of the world, but I'm going to address how. The energy transition we need to make, specifically in 4 years, my target is to get us from this miserable 7,000 megawatts, of which we can only supply about 3,000 anyways, because our transmission lines are so broken. Even when we have production, we can't transmit. So I'm going to go to use gas money to start this investment. And where I will go precisely is the NLNG. Nigeria is an investor in that company, and it's doing well right now, but they don't talk about it. The only time you hear about them is when they are giving literature prizes. Very smart people. But you will find out that out of that 49% that we have, they are paying the money to the NNPC, not to the consolidated account of the federal government. The last time they made a deposit publicly was when Buhari came and they thought Buhari was still the Buhari to be afraid of. They deposited immediately $4.5 or $4 billion. And after that, we haven't heard anything. I just read the book of a former managing director of this company, and he said that the former regime would tell them that when they make the deposit, they shouldn't make it public at all. So I want to take that percentage of our dividend and start investing it in energy mixes, starting from solar, tidal, right? And also hydro, as well as biofuel, like biomass, and use these mixes to create both employment and real energy that can hook at least some 20 million homes immediately in 4 years to the to grids. And I also want to break the national grid. There's no need for somebody to be producing electricity in Lagos. It has to go first to embed before it can be served. And we can also retail electricity with regards to renewables. If you have solar panels on your roof, we can have you buy a meter from the federal government that allow you to sell power, just as we sell recharge cards. I know that some of these ideas are strange and you think I'm crazy, but they are happening already, because the reason we are where we are today is because the rest of the world is moving forward.
Okay.
We are moving backwards.
Okay. So pretty much you're touting sort of like a liberalization of the sector and a lot of creativity in the sector. Professor Mehdi, I'll come to you on this. How do you plan to meet Nigeria's immediate power needs when the mainstay is oil and gas, but you have to do this without oil and gas, which is a tall order?
Yeah, thank you. I have to phrase the background to that question about how I am impressed with what went on in Ukraine in the war that started since February 24, and they had power, and their trains were running. But in my country, if there's a storm, NEPA goes off. You know what I'm saying? So, and then now you're hearing about bombing of their electricity installations, and they are facing difficulties, power sharing and all that many months into the war. But I think I will go with solar energy, which is affordable here. I will also go for the windmill. But then I will have to bring to your notice something we know is happening now. In the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, they are using excreta to bring power. And part of the university is using it. If you can now begin to see where that comes from, as I'm speaking with you. Yes, the Lion gadgets. It's a gadget under the Vice Chancellor of the University of Nigeria. They're using that material to get power. So, and you can get that in, you're never going to get shot of that material in terms of what it's going to give you. And then if you harness that.
We're never going to get shot of excreta?
Are you?
Just asking.
That's the point. Are you? That's the point. So I'm just trying to tell you how available it is and how it is working. So these are areas, and that's the university where I teach. And I've had a couple of lectures for that institute, and I happen to know about that. I know they have problems there. But these are areas where government can come in. And don't forget, all over the world, technology are driven from the universities and from the military installations. And some of the things, even all this, some of the gadgets we're using have been in use in the military for about 20 years before now. When they're tired of it, that's when they bring it to you. So there are a lot going on in the university, especially this one I mentioned. And it's something I want to look at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm coming to you now, the presidential candidates of the SDP. How do you plan to meet Nigeria's immediate power needs? With emphasis on how, without oil and gas?
With due respect, I will answer the question, but it suffers from fallacy of false dilemma. You don't have to do that. Because you do all of the above approach if you want to solve your energy problem. I am a living example of 14 years ago, I took my law firm out of national grid. I started using alternative energy, solar. If you go to Ondo, you see my compound, I've trained 2,000 young people on solar. And my house, you can come and fact check it. You see that I have solar panel everywhere. You cannot do it for a country like Nigeria. You'll be committing economic suicide because our gas reserve is enough. It's an envy of the world. So why will I have gas under my feet and not use it because I want to win an argument? So the first thing you do is to bring thermal stations, but make sure that we get away from one thing. In 2001, the last time I had anything to do with the government, on power. I attended the meeting, the power committee, and I looked at them. I said, look, you have made a big mistake. You can never generate electricity because you are highly interested in awarding contracts, even though you are broke. So what you do is that you create an environment whereby you allow thermal to be used because we have gas. You allow hydro to be used. Even this flood we had, we could have built one in Taraba or Benue or Adamawa to relieve from Lagdo Dam. Third, you ensure that you allow solar to be used, you allow wind to be used. Then there's something I brought to this country which was never here before, floating solar. Any water surface, you can put solar panels there. So you have to do all of the above. And you have to make sure that the regulatory regime is not the nonsense that they are doing now, where they are trying to capture rent. They want you to pay to them when you generate electricity. That's why they create all these discos and they never produce music nor electricity. So what you need to do, therefore, is that the government will create a regulation where you can come and sell power freely. We can generate 100,000 megawatts without 1 naira of government money. I alone, I generate 1.2 megawatt myself without collecting government money. It can be done. So that's what we're going to do, but I'm never going to subscribe to a system where I have a large gas reserve and Europe is fighting war to control gas, and I don't use my gas. And gas is almost harmless. It's the bridge energy tool between the dreamers of the future and the current realities. We have gas, bigger than the size of the US economy. I'm going to use that.
Thank you very much, presidential candidates. And yes, gas is certainly a cleaner fossil fuel, although still a fossil fuel. The next question, you have 1 minute to answer, after which we are going back to our audience from questions from the audience. And it's a very straightforward question this time, gentlemen. What is your vision for Nigeria without oil? That's the question. Mr. Shaware, let's start with you, please.
I have been the only candidate who spoke about Nigeria without oil as far back as 2018. And it came from the knowledge of the longevity of oil. I know and I've seen that oil is a product of the past. And very soon, those who have oil better get prepared to drinking it themselves, because the rest of the world has moved on without oil. They are creating vehicles. There are now planes being manufactured that don't use any kind of oil. They use solar. And it also applies to gas. My friend is saying that gas is the future. Well, he didn't say the future. He says it's the bridge between now and the future. The truth is that when you take gas, too, as a geographer, I know that geology, you create a space underneath the earth. And if you take too much of it, you create a disequilibrium. And some 50 years from now, places that are producing gas without care might experience earthquakes, because the earth is a bunch of elements stacked upon themselves. The moment you remove one, you have created a vacuum that can affect you in the future. That's why we are looking at products that can never finish. Sunshine will not go away. Water will always be with us. People will always use excreta, like Professor said. What he's trying to say is biomass, by the way. Waste, you use waste to generate. You combine the excreta of cow, human being, goats, everything. Lagos is enough. Has enough waste to generate electricity for the Southwest. It's the truth. Because people keep, throwing out waste. And waste is not only excreta, by the way. Urine is waste. Food leftover is waste, and several other wastes that are out there and catered for can generate electricity. So we must understand. But when you talk about vision, you must have it real. And for you to have a vision for a Nigeria without oil, you must understand that oil is going out of business, and an energy transition has already occurred. It's just that it has even already occurred here in Nigeria. I went to Kano a week ago, and I'm seeing solar farms when you are flying into Kano. And this is a Kano that everybody thinks everybody there is a Amajiri, and they're already building solar farms. Solar farms can produce over 1 million jobs if you have solar farms all over the north, and it will produce enough electricity for the whole of the country. And then you will now be asking the northerners to pay you, to get paid 13%, because there will be no oil in the Niger Delta, and all the hillbillies in the Niger Delta will now be wondering what happened to them.
Thank you, Mr. Shaware. Engineer Sani, what is your vision for Nigeria without oil, sir?
A great nation, very, very great nation, economically, socially, politically, because if you look at what is happening in this country, like I said, we have young, dynamic population, that you can tap into. And the fourth industrial revolution is going to be powered by information technology. And we have people already in Nigeria who are attracting billions of dollars, into this economy for using their brains. The next thing I'll look at is how do I turn this country to be the tourist destination, because look at Dubai. Dubai, yes, had oil, but Dubai is not all about oil. It's about tourism. It's about how you organize, the country. And we are occupying a very choicy position on the equator that if we organize ourselves, properly, chase out this insecurity, which is artificial, really, because by the time you take care of the architecture we have talked about here, you will have a beautiful nation that everybody wants to come to. We have so much, believe you me, and tourism, like you said, you don't have to invest much. It's just the air that somebody will come and take. The air is God-given. All you need to do, build good hospitals, the hotels, the roads, and then things that should work. And we can do it. We have the ability, we have the talent, we have the resources. What is happening is that Nigeria, without oil, we first of all have to tackle how do we make hay while the sun shines? How do we take advantage of the oil while it lasts? That's what we must address. How do we chase out corruption? How do we ensure that we organize this sector, properly so that it can give us the money we need? That's what Dubai did. They got the money from oil. They built a tourist center that everybody is now flying there. Big companies are having their headquarters in Dubai. We can do it in Nigeria. We are the biggest thing on the continent of Africa. And today, Africa is the next destination in terms of economic development. We all know that. World destination. We have the deposits of 30% of world, resources in Africa. Then Nigeria is number one. The biggest economy, the largest population, the people that everywhere you give them a chance, they are number one or a very good number two. We can make this country to become the greatest, country on the planet Earth.
Thank you, Engineer Sani. Professor Umuadi, what is your vision for Nigeria without oil, sir?
Thank you. The foundation has been laid already with the Startup Act assented to by the President, and that will bring out the talents of our young men and women in information technology, and that is enduring. And this will go with communication skills. This will go with analytical skills. And that is the difference you find maybe elsewhere. We have a different, a different culture. We aggregate more. So we have to build on the strength of our own culture. But if you add things like the perseverance that people who are tending to you show elsewhere, that's very reassuring. And they can be with you for like all day until they are sure that you are satisfied. And all these things take people to places where they go. And it's not today that people who live in London started going to Dubai to shop. And it's gotten higher and higher. If you know, going from the West to Dubai to shop. Apart from that, you get better sizes there of the same clothes than you can get in the West, etc., etc. So, besides oil, you have this issue of the Startup Act. It's a monumental leap for Nigeria this time. And then, of course, we have our good old agriculture that we can always go to, and then find time to develop them after taking over the state from the marauders, from the bandits, from the kidnappers, from the people who are terrorizing the people, so that people can still travel the country as they wish. And that is the human capital that we must develop. And that is where the leadership comes in. And that's the people now begin to feel at home in their own country. And then people want to return and spend time in their own country. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Prince Adebayo, what is your vision for Nigeria without oil, sir?
It's very important, which is the creative art, the Nollywood, that's contributing so much to our GDP. I think it can be Nigeria without oil, one of the factors that we can tap into.
Thank you, Engineer. Prince Adebayo, over to you.
My vision for Nigeria without oil has three angles. There was a Nigeria without oil before, and we made rapid progress. There is Nigeria without oil now. We are stuck. And whether we like it or not, a time is coming where we will have no oil. However, let us understand, oil is not a bad thing to have. And my vision for Nigeria without oil will start with Nigeria with oil. I will use the oil money we have now very well. Three secrets you need to know. There is no country in the world that has oil deposit that looked away, that didn't exploit it. Two, there's no country in the world that has oil now that is not exploiting it now. Even in the US, they're still giving licenses for oil companies. Norway, one of the most environmentally conscious people who send NGOs all over the world, they're still drilling their oil now. So we need to make sure that we drill our oil now, collect the money correctly, remediate our environment well, use the money to plan for the future without oil. And that future, come whenever it comes, is okay. Additional thing I want to let us know, crude oil is not only for petroleum. You use it for medicine. I have pharmaceutical companies, and many of the components are used for medicine. Three or fourth, I'm the only person here who has lithium deposit. I'm a miner, and I have lithium on my mines. I work on them. Even I had a board meeting 2 days ago on lithium. Lithium itself is mining. So there's no time. You can live in a world in which you don't get what you need from the earth. That's the reason we are called earthling. Everything we need is from the earth, including agriculture. So we must know that you have to do everything responsibly. These new technologies are even more environmentally challenging sometimes because they take rare earth minerals, some of which you have to blast the air to take from. You see a lot of Asians going around with policemen in Nigeria. They are looking for lithium, they are looking for cobalt, and all of that. So we need to be a responsible government. The reason why we are blaming oil is that we don't want to blame ourselves that we mismanage our oil. Oil is not the problem. We need to form a government that is capable to occupy the space, account for every drop of resources that we have, and use that money. While Dubai is showing you pictures of a shopping mall, Abu Dhabi is still drilling oil. So don't let us be fooled. You can come and do tourism in Plateau, but don't stop taking crude and managing it well. The problem in this country is that we don't have a proper government that can render services. What we will do, and we're talking of immediate things, what I will do is to make sure that you have a government that can actually service every square inch of the country, take care of your resources, and now transition you to the future. That is what we need to do. Don't let us run away from what we have that God gave us to make our life better.
Prince Adebayo, thank you very much. Thank you to all of our presidential candidates for your answers. And it's now time for us to turn to the audience for questions. We are going to start with Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Mike Ozekome. Chief, do pardon me, Chief Mike Ozekome.
Hi,
Chief.
Whether hi, Chief, or Mr. The important thing is that the hood does not make the monk. I thank you very much, and I want to thank the panelists. I came in a little bit late when I got to know about it, and I want to confess that the quality of debate, of conversation, national conversation I've seen here tonight has emboldened me to think that we've not lost it all, that there are certainly talents available in this country. So I can see in the next government, for example, whether they win or not, whether they become president or not, saying, hello, I need a kitchen cabinet that will help me drive my vision. And I can't see these 4 gentlemen there being left out of such a cabinet by a government that is really serious. Having said that, you may have said other things maybe before I came in, which I didn't know, so you must pardon me if I appear to take us back a little, because I'm going to need your direct intervention on this. I know you'll be speaking about security and about the economy in a most admirable manner, I must confess. I've learned things tonight I have never known before. But I want to say, all of you, from all the discussion so far, I've not seen anyone touch the fundamentals of our problems. what we call the national question. You can't talk about a robust economy. You can't drive away insecurity when the very organogram that brings you together is fundamentally faulted, and you are riding an aircraft without a compass. I will want us to come back to this issue. The Constitution is the birth certificate of any nation, the best certificate of any nation. Do we have a constitution that can drive this your vision when our present constitution is actually a schedule attached to decree number 24 of 1999, and that the General Abdusalami Abubakar government actually held the 1999 constitution, elections without a constitution. Now, you want a robust economy. You have not looked at the present constitution that has 167 items on the exclusive legislative list. What is the business of the federal government? Licensing your vehicles, plate numbers of your cars, federal government. What is their business with education, unity schools? With all respect, without meaning to sign off, I just returned from the US on Friday. Do you know that the Miami International Airport and the Jackson Hasby Airport in Atlanta, Georgia, are controlled by county councils, what we call local government areas here? County councils, local government areas control Atlanta, the busiest international airport in the whole world. In Nigeria, it is the federal government that controls all airports. They will control your marriage. Do you know that for your marriage to be valid, you must have a valid marriage certificate at the registry? So your marriage, your relationship with your husband and wife in your bedroom is controlled by the federal government. My brothers, brilliant people on that panel, you can't grow a nation like that. You can't talk about security, about insecurity, when even the form you are going to fill asks you after your name and your father's name. They ask you about your religion. They ask you about your ethnic group. They ask you about your language, about your local government. So you have already segregated the nation. You have already divided us. You have already told us we are not one. And at the International Bar Conference I went for in Miami, Florida, I asked one American, I said, "Where are you from?" He looked at me. I said, "Sorry, sir, what do you mean? You mean where I live, or where I work, or where I was born, or where I schooled, or where I grew up?" Because they don't have them. So, sirs, you are going to tell us tonight, if it can be done in other countries, like Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, Eritrea, South Africa, having a brand new constitution that brings about the people's aspirations and hopes after a constituent assembly, a constitution that is therefore indigenous and autochthonous, enjoying the confidence and legitimacy of the people, such as we had it before, which must be subjected to a people's referendum, as we did in Nigeria when the Midwest region became autonomous from Western region on the 10th of August, 1963. How are you going to go about the issue of us starting from brass tacks? Because talking about amending the Constitution under Section 9, you can't amend a bad document. The fact that you have put a bandage on your oozing sore and you put perfume and sarsaparilla does not make that sore to go away. It doesn't, does it? The fact that you are suffering epilepsy and you are treating it with a drug meant for eczema without, like Naaman the leper, dipping yourself in River Jordan 7 times to cleanse yourself of your leprosy, political leprosy, economic leprosy, social leprosy, cultural leprosy, without changing your moral ethos, societal values. How do you make us to grow without a brand new constitution? And if you are going to have one, how do you go about it? Thank you.
Thank you. The straightforward question, can you repeat that last part again? How do you intend on, just so that our presidential candidates answer your question directly, that last part, how do you...
The last part?
Yes, how do you improve on the Constitution?
Not improve.
Mm-hmm.
How do you replace the present militarily imposed constitution which has not given us our vision?
Thank you.
How do you start from the brass tacks?
Thank you very much. Let's get answers to this question. Candidates, again, you have 2 minutes to respond, please. Let's start from Professor Umuadi this time around.
Thank you. I'm running for president of Nigeria on the triple banner of the rule of law, separation of powers, and due process. Now, you see, I'm a realist. I belong to that school of thoughts in law. I'm a realist. So the reality is that I'm a presidential candidate under ABGA in partisan politics. And that, run is predicated under the Constitution of Nigeria of 1999 as amended. So I'm bound by it. If I become president, I will be president of a democratic Nigeria. And anything I want to do about whatever that I meet, not to talk about the Constitution, which is the grand norm, the basis of all the laws, the proper democratic processes. Whatever misgivings that we have about the Constitution will have to be looked at, and then we'll come to a decision by legitimate structures that are laid down, incidentally, according to the Constitution itself. Any other thing will be antithetical, and there will be no room to accommodate that.
Thank you. Mr. Shawara, can we get your response, please?
I am sure that learned SAN came a little late. I had spoken that the Nigerian Constitution is illegal, null, and void by way of its makers. If you ask people in this gathering, the people who wrote the American Constitution was written around 1787, they will tell you those people's names. If I ask you if you knew anybody that participated in writing the 1999 Constitution, nobody can tell me, the people who wrote it. It was a fraudulent, illegally imposed document by the military. But let me tell you, SAN, in 1992, when I was 21 years old, we gathered, and you were there, with Akaba Shorun, Ganifa Wemi, and wanted to have a sovereign national conference in Lagos because we're tired of the Nigerian Constitution. The military sent police and soldiers to come and beat the heebie-jeebies out of us. Yes, this is the reality. So when apartheid ended, even though those who emerged as apartheid leaders had to swear by a constitution, they erected a temporary, they made a temporary constitution. The Nigerian apartheid state, when it ends,
hopefully in 2023, we need a brand new constitution. We cannot continue like this. We cannot continue, because everything about Nigeria is fake. Because the country itself had foundational issues. It was set up as a business in 1900 by the Royal Niger Company. Even our police, which is part of our problem with security, the police was never created to provide security for Nigerians. There was a time it used to be called the Queen's Constabulary. So it has always had that DNA of VIP mentality since the police was created as a business with Nigeria to protect the business of Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr.
So,
Shaware.
I just answered your question. Come early next time.
Thank you. Okay, Engineer Sani, let's get your response to this question as well, please.
I think it's the question of chicken and the egg. Which one comes first? And I know that, yes, as a nation, we are aspiring to be as perfect as we can be. But I think perfection is a journey. It's not something that happens, all at once. And I think we're already on that journey. So long as we have National Assembly that's supposed to be active in this regard, making the Constitution to really address all the issues that all of us together represent, so long we are able to elect those that have the passion, the interest of Nigerians through credible elections, I'm sure we will get it right someday. But I think for now, we should rely on electing right people into the National Assembly to do the right things for us. And then I'm sure, even America, you mentioned, they do not only rely on the Constitution, which like is not as heavy as what we have in Nigeria. They make laws, and these laws that are made are what fashion the way people live, to adapt to situations that will arise, so that they continue to live as happy people in one country. So for me, yes, we are not happy with what we have, but why don't we, like everybody does, all countries, they amend it. The amendment can be such that we will be able to cure, whatever these defects may be. So that's my submission.
Thank you, Engineer Sani. Prince Adebayo, over to you, sir.
Okay, this to me looks like a very simple problem. Just like the learned said, I'm a constitutional lawyer in Nigeria. I'm also a constitutional lawyer in the US. So both the Nigerian Constitution and the US, I earn a living from using them. This is not a big problem. In Nigeria, we need to understand that our first constitution came out of Lancaster House when we went, and it was a Queen's order in council. So it was order in council. It wasn't an autonomous constitution, but it was an order in council promulgated by the British Parliament. And Awolowo was very angry because they nearly didn't form quorum when they were passing it. They saw it as an irrelevant legislation. But it produced the best schools we can get, a functioning regional government. And in 1963, first 1961, when what we call Sadauna province, when they wanted to leave the Trust Territory of Cameroon, they had a plebiscite. And that plebiscite made Mubi, all those other places, Song, in Adamawa now and Taraba, to join Nigeria. So, and the American Constitution was not democratic too when it started. It was just a bunch of plantation owners who got out in Philadelphia and wrote something. They didn't include black people, they didn't include women. But there have been several amendments to the US Constitution. Someone who was not a white person will now be able to be an American citizen, but for the 14th and 15th amendment. So what I would do in Nigeria is to first obey the Constitution as it is now. In England, when I was born, the Scottish had no parliament. Now there's Scottish parliament, there's Welsh Assembly. So you can always improve on your Constitution. And we have made amendments. It's just that they're making amendments for big men. When one man dies, who takes over? When one man travels, who takes over? They're not making fundamental amendment that can help the people. And I love chapter 2 of the Constitution and chapter 4 of the Constitution. And remember, we had Constituent Assembly in 1977 that produced the 79 Constitution, which we are copying now.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you for all your thoughts. Thank you so much. Real quickly, we just take one question more from the audience. Anybody in the audience, the roving microphone, please. One question more. It's been a very, very interesting conversation this evening. One question more. Thank you so much. Have we finally picked one person? And just to inform you, in case you missed it, you're being shown live on Arise TV. Right? Do we have the person? Yes. Good. Okay, your question.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. My name is Michael Bakare. And my question goes to all of the 4 candidates. And first, before I go ahead with my question, I really want to say this, that in the history of myself, listening to presidential candidates in Nigeria, these are the 4 most brilliant candidates.
Please, can we go straight to the question?
Now, here's my question.
Straight to it, yeah.
My question is, how do we unite Nigerians divided by tribal lines and all sorts of sentiments?
Thank you.
How do we unite them together?
Thank you so much. So how do we unite Nigerians divided across tribal lines and all sorts of sentiments? I'll come to you first, Engineer Sonny, on this. Then afterwards, I'll come to Mr. Omoyele Lishore. How do we unite Nigerians?
Okay, my administration, our government is going to be based on rule of law, meaning that law will apply to all, fairly, and it will be known to everybody. You will not be punished. You will be punished only according to the law, meaning that all of us will be equal before the law. And if you have that as your mantra, that is what your government use. I'm sure Nigerians will be united because there will be no nepotism, there will be no unnecessary discrimination, marginalization, and the things of that nature, because all of us are equal. And you can go to court. The judiciary will be open and fair and independent. And the administration of law will be known to you. You can question freely without anybody challenging you. So I believe rule of law is it. If we can be governed by rule of law, perhaps insecurity, this degradation of, the retrogression of our economy and things like that may not happen because corruption will be dealt with, with dispatch. So I know the reasons why we have the divisive, tendencies in this country is what Lumas Rui said. We have what you call triple heritage. You have this influence of the Western culture influence, you have your own traditional culture, you have the Islamic influence, and you have to now contend with all this. And unfortunately, some of us begin to now see our ethnicity as our world, instead of looking at Nigeria as our world. That's why sometimes you see some candidates we have, exhibiting some of these tendencies that divide us more. So we are going to work towards uniting this country on the basis of rule of law.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Engineer Sonny. How would you unite Nigeria?
I've heard this for so long. It seems like government is focused on it. Every government that came in my lifetime always talk about the unity of Nigeria is sacrosanct. But the truth is that Nigeria has 2 major problems, and without solving them seriously, we can't unite anybody. We have foundational problems, which is what we just finished discussing. Those things that divided us. This is a country put together by outsiders. And it's not as if Nigeria is the only country put together by outsiders. But our own case is peculiar, that even, like I mentioned, our name, flag, everything is lazy. It doesn't. Some woman named Niger area, flag, just white and green. They could have just thrown something in the middle to make it look a little bit great.
But it was designed by a Nigerian.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's because we never got it right from the beginning. But that's on the side. What is going to unite Nigeria is to solve the foundational problems, and one of it is constitution. People must find identity in that document. They must know where they belong. They must know how they got here. They must have a right, as a matter of right, to exit if they find it to be a bad marriage. Yes, you can't force people together by creating ministries that do orientation. You do it by way of justice. So I'll say, do you want to unite Nigerians? Do justice to the people of Nigeria. It's as simple as ABC. Reason I say so is that I lived abroad for 20 years, and there was no day I was asking whether I'm an American or not, because every 2 weeks I get my check, right? I get paid, I live like a human being. I was treated better as a black person in America than I'm treated in Nigeria as a black person governed by a black person.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Real quickly, Professor, we'll come to you.
Yes, thank you. What I will do is to try to earn their trust, their confidence. The only avenue, and that is what I'm looking out for, to unite Nigerians of all persuasions across the 6 geopolitical zones to feel like one again, is for them to have confidence in you that you can hold an even scale for everyone. And for you to do that, you have to do things as simply as calling a spade a spade. In other words, we have conflicting cultures, we have conflicting religion, and we have the self of entitlement sometimes, which stops you from getting to the core of where the issues are. But then we'll have to decide what we want. Do we want a country or not? If we want a country and you want everybody to come together as one, then you're looking for some man who is ready to put aside his own personal interests and say things as they are. That is what I stand for.
Okay.
So that is what I'm going to do, okay. And I'm going to do that with a robust feeling, knowing that I don't have anything behind, and I don't have any personal interest of mine.
Okay.
Very important to me. And then I could be able now to look everybody in the eye and say, shift from where you are. Because, you know, when you want to decide a matter, 2 people cannot play a draw. You know what I'm saying? Somebody has crossed the line. And you tell him you have crossed the line. And then I'm sure they will take it. And then that means if you are, oppressing people,
thank you.
You stop.
Thank you so much. Prince Adebayo, how would you unite Nigeria?
By being fair and just, and by living by a good example. The problem we have in this country is not our diversity. It's the weaponization of our differences. When the elite they are in power, they are united by stealing. They don't remember tribes. When you go to EFCC, you will see Yoruba, Hausa, BBO, everything on one charge sheet of stealing billions. They didn't disagree over their ethnicity or religion at that time. And the people themselves, the poor, are united by misery because they all have blackout, no education, and everything. So, but what they want to do is make it look like the problem is because we are different. No, it's not because we are different. My wife is there, sitting next to Shivo Osekome there. She doesn't speak a word of my language, but she hasn't been maltreated once by my people. So I believe that what you need to understand is that leaders must have the brain, the history, the depth, the fairness, the discipline to manage diversity. The British were here, and they spent many years. They were in India. They spent many years. So you have to have leaders that have the craftsmanship, the statesmanship, to manage diverse people. But what our people are doing is that they are dividing diverse people and using that division. For example, look at our Constitution. It has inefficiencies. It's not because of our ethnicity. It has inefficiencies because we put on the exclusive list things that should be on concurrent list. We can have enough senators, vote 109 senators, vote 360 representatives who can go to National Assembly. In 1 month, they will fix that. You don't have to talk about whether somebody is from one part or the other. But our leaders can't manage diversity. Secondly, they refuse to manage diversity because they want to use it to create tension and division, and a small clique will be in power for a long time. But when they want to steal your money, they are united. Okay. Be sure of that.
Prince Adebayo, thank you. Presidential candidates, thank you all. We have less than 15 minutes of this town hall to go, and it's time for us to call on our fact checkers to come and present their verdicts. Premium Times, please, can we start with you? Sorry, candidates, you have, after this, the NJC will bring their fact-checking claims forward, then you have 1 minute to respond. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. These findings have been from Nigerian Fact Checkers Coalition. Yeah. So we are just going to start with the last one we have about the framers of the American Constitution. Just a context of the 55 delegates that attended the Constitutional Convention of 1787, only about 25 were slave owners, according to Geda Lehman Institute of American History. And for instance, Oliver Hayworth from Connecticut was a jurist. He wasn't a slave owner. So not all of them were slave owners. Just about 25 of the 55 were slave owners. Thank you. Yeah, so then Mr. Omoyele Sowore claimed that the oil companies are owing Nigeria $6.4 billion, while multiple reports have shown that NATE revealed that about 77 oil companies were owing Nigeria $6.4 billion. Updated report actually showed that that amount has reduced to, by March 2022, to $2.67 billion US, according to NATE itself. So the claim is not correct. It's false. Thank you. Then Professor, it's not correct. Yeah, Professor Humiade claimed 11 states in the North have not domesticated the Child Rights Act. According to reports by Tribune, quoting the Ministry of Women Affairs in May 2022 and the United Nations International Children Emergency Fund in August 2022, indicates that 31 states in Nigeria have so far enacted the Child Rights Act, while only 5 are yet to domesticate the law, and these 5 are Adamawa, Bauchi, Gombe, Kano, Zamfara. All of them are in the north, but the number is not up to 11. So the other claim is false. Mr. Sowore said that Lake Chad shrunk to 10% of its original size. Multiple records updated up to 2019 showed that one of Africa's largest lake, Lake Chad, has shrunk by around 90% since the 1960s. So Mr. Showore's claim is correct. Yeah. Yeah. Then Mr. Sowore also said that Nigeria has more women qualified to vote than men. News report by ICIR, the International Center for Investigative Reporting in Nigeria, on July 2nd, and recently by Punch on 2nd August, show that there are more women than men that have been registered by INEC to vote in the 2023 election. So Mr. Showore's claim is correct.
No clapping or cheering, please.
Then Engineer Sani says that British Petroleum paid $15 billion US for the Gulf of Mexico spill. He didn't state whether that's for criminal penalty or settlement. In any case, what he found is that what was paid as criminal penalty was $4.5 billion US, and in settlement,
Professor Omwadi, was it you who said that?
No, that's...
yes.
Professor Mehdi said that.
Okay, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, so that's what we found. $4.5 billion US was paid in a criminal penalty. So to the extent that it didn't provide a context, so that's false, that's misleading. Sorry. Yeah, then Mr. Sowore said that all countries that are doing well economically, their citizens usually don't use guns. So we use 2 countries with high GDP per capita to fact check this claim. The United States has GDP per capita of 69,287 US dollars, and it has gone per person's rate of 120.5 to 100 persons. And Canada has GDP per capita of $52,051, and it has gone per capita citizens rate of 34.7 citizens per 100. On the other hand, Nigeria's GDP per capita is 2,085 US dollars and has gone per capita rate of 3.2 per person. So this claim is false. And the source of these statistics is the World Bank. Yeah, thank you very much. That's all we have got. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Nigeria Coalition of Fact Checkers, including Premium Times. Thank you very much, presidential candidates. You've heard what's true and what's false. Now you each have 1 minute to respond to what we've just heard. Timekeeper, let's set the clock at 1 minute, please. Mr. Shaware, you seem quite popular then, so let's start with you.
Well, this is why you should have invited us last week. There were a lot of bogus statistics in your last week's, you know the people who know how to bring out wrong numbers. But with regards to my first fast-checked issue with 6 billion, I'm insisting that 6 billion has not been paid to the federal government, and they can meet me any day to take me to where the money was paid down. You can't find it. They are still owing the federal government 6.6 billion. By now, it's even more by way of what I know, because I'm also a fact giver. Yes. With regards to my reference to use of gun, I wasn't referring to citizens carrying guns. I'm saying countries that well off economically, they don't normally carry gun in terms of security to control crime, because there's a nexus between prosperity and low crime rates. And you don't use US to judge prosperity, because the US is not a country that is prospering very well.
Thanks, Mr. Shaware. Time is up. Okay, Engineer Sani, let's come to you next. Sorry, Professor Umwadi, sorry.
Yes, thank you. I stand by what I said. He came up that I didn't differentiate, but let me say it now. $15 billion was paid for cleanup. Then total sums paid by BP came to 60 billion. And I did put in that report, which I read, I put this thing down in the paper I presented at the ICANN conference in the last time. Where was that? In Sheraton. Okay? So I have it on my phone. You want me to bring my evidence?
You can feel free to present it in your free time, sir.
But I say that I'm correct. That BP paid $60 billion. And he went on to say that BP exposure at that time was about $180 billion. Even at that, he staggered it, if you get my point. And then I did say about the $10 million that Shell paid, which he would have agreed in the Ogoni thing. So I stand by my record.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. And before we round up, I know there were no fact-checking claims towards you, Engineer Sani or Prince Adebayo, but would you like to comment at all on the fact-checking claims that have been made? If so, you have 1 minute.
Well, it's good that we have fact-checkers, so I'm sure they're going to have serious business over time. But there was something concerning American Constitution. I said plantation owners and no women, no blacks. So that is the Constitution of America, which has produced many good things in the world, came from a humble background. And that we can use our Constitution as it is now and change it and amend it and improve on it. But you need to elect people who believe in that. This is the same reason why I didn't run for the Senate. I want to go to a place where I can use the law as it is now. But elect senators, if they sign a new constitution, I'm going to sign it.
Okay. Thank you all so much. All right, I'd like to say a very big thank you. It's been an engaging evening, few hours here spent with all of you, our presidential candidates who have joined us tonight. And special thanks to all of those that work with us to make this town hall series a success. Thank you guys so much once again for being here.
Thank you to our audience too for attending this evening as well. As we said at the start of the program, this town hall series is going to have a number of additions as we approach the elections, and Arise will keep the public posted on the next series.
All right, I wish you all well as you head home, and it's been a pleasure, I should say, for me this evening, co-anchoring this. I am Rufai Oseni.
And I'm Leila Johnson Salami. Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you very much once again.